Chapter 38. This is the Master Knight's talent suppression sharing over the Devil Follower Knight. It can't be. Han Q widened his eyes and looked at Long Houchen as if he was looking at a monster. The shock and disbelief in his eyes were not concealed at all. Taking a deep breath, Han Q turned his gaze to his grandson. His expression also became solemn, and his right hand pointed at Han Yu through the air. In an instant, Long Houchen saw that Han Q's finger had turned into a sparkling and translucent golden color. Glorious body, this was the 7th level skill of the knight. Han Q's palm trembled, and his 5 fingers moved rhythmically. Streaks of light that were filled with mysterious trajectories rippled out from his palm. In an instant, they turned into a complicated pattern of light, directly imprinting on Han Yu's chest. Immediately, Han Yu's body trembled, and a golden light spurted out from his chest. It slowly rose into the air, and became a golden pillar of light. The pillar of light rose slowly. Han Q's gaze was fixed on the speed at which the pillar of light was rising, and the expression on his face became more and more agitated. Yi Hua and Long Houchen were somewhat puzzled. They did not recognize the ability that Han Q had just used, and they did not understand what exactly had happened. After a moment, the golden pillar of light finally stopped rising. Meanwhile, Han Yu's hands were unconsciously clenched into fists at this moment. It's true, it's actually really like this. 80-80. Looking back, Han Q's gaze when he looked at Long Houchen had become extremely strange. He sized him up from head to toe, as if he was looking at a rare treasure. Long Houchen felt somewhat uncomfortable under his gaze, and he could not help but ask, "Lord Holy Knight, what happened?" Han Q took a deep breath and waved his right hand. A layer of golden light screen had already enveloped everything in the room, including the area beneath their feet. What he said next shocked Yi Hua and Long Houchen. Little Houchen, you really shock me to the extreme. Innate internal spiritual energy. 97, Son of Light. I didn't expect that after 6,000 years of the Dark Age, the Knights Templars would finally have a scion of light. Ha 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 ha. Long Houchen and Yi Hua both stared at him in bewilderment. If it was someone else who said this, perhaps this pair of master and disciple would have already prepared to fight. But in front of them was the Holy Knight Captain of the Knights Templars. That was a super expert who could easily destroy them with a wave of his hand. Moreover, they didn't think that Han Q would harm them. How did you know? Long Houchen asked blankly. Since the other party had already said the specific number, there was no point in hiding it anymore. So, he might as well ask the question in his heart. Han Q couldn't calm down at all. The fire of excitement burned in his eyes. It's because you revealed a flaw in the Retainer Knight contract. The Retainer Knight and the Master Knight have a close relationship. To sign the contract, the bloodline of both parties needs to be connected. That's why a drop of your blood is needed. And when the Retainer Knight contract is completed, if the Master Knight's talent far surpasses the Retainer Knight's, then the Retainer Knight's talent will increase along with the Master Knight's talent. When the contract ends, this talent increase will disappear. The so-called far surpasses the Retainer Knight's talent has a certain amount, which is what I said just now. And this amount is the innate internal spiritual energy difference of more than 30. In other words, if the Master Knight's innate internal spiritual energy is 30% higher than the Retainer Knight's, the Retainer Knight's talent will increase accordingly. The extent of this increase will reduce the gap between the two's innate internal spiritual energy by half. Xiao Yu's innate internal spiritual energy is 63, which is already considered pretty good. But now, his innate internal spiritual energy is as high as 80. In other words, his innate internal spiritual energy has increased by no less than 17 points. If 17 is doubled, then it's 34 points. With the addition of 63 points, I can naturally calculate your innate internal spiritual energy. 97, this is 97 points of innate internal spiritual energy. I really didn't expect that in my lifetime, I would actually be able to see a powerhouse with the constitution of the Son of Light. Long Houchen was dumbfounded, Yi Hua was also dumbfounded, and Han Yu was giggling like a fool. Yi Hua muttered, Why have I never heard that a retainer knight can have such a benefit? Han Q said, There aren't many retainer knights in the first place. Moreover, there are also several kinds of retainer knight contracts. Only this rune that I researched from the ancient Elven language can produce this kind of innate spiritual energy sharing. Not to mention that you haven't heard of it, even among the temple's knight rank, only a few people know about it. Moreover, it's useless for the vast majority of people, so there's naturally no need for our temple to publicize it. Yi Hua's body suddenly trembled uncontrollably. With a trembling voice, he asked, Elder Saint Knight, how many retainers can this Master Knight have? Han Q replied without any hesitation, 2. Because this contract will produce a certain amount of spiritual connection, if there are too many retainers, it will affect the Master Knight's own spiritual power, which will be disadvantageous. Therefore, we generally believe that it's more suitable for the Master Knight to have at most 2 retainers. With a plop sound, Long Houchen knelt on one knee on the ground. Elder Saint Knight, I beg you, please also plant a contract rune on Teacher. Teacher is the real genius. Hearing what he said, Han Q was a bit stunned. Yi Hua looked at Long Houchen with an excited expression. No, Long Houchen, this will make it so that you will no longer be able to have a retainer knight. Long Houchen shook his head blankly. Teacher, becoming strong is the most important thing. It's enough for me to have Brother Han's assistance. As long as I can help you in terms of talent, this disciple will not hesitate to help you. Wait, why don't I understand what you mean? Han Q looked at the master and disciple in confusion. Yi Hua sighed, then lowered his head and said, Elder Saint Knight, this subordinate's innate internal spiritual power is only 8 points. What? Han Q cried out in surprise. His voice was so loud that it shook Long Houchen's and disciples' ears, causing them to buzz. Fortunately, he had set up the holy light inner spiritual power to block the sound, so he wasn't afraid that the sound would spread. This time, Han Q was really shocked. It wasn't any less than when he found out that Long Houchen's innate internal spiritual power was as high as 97 points. What did 8 points of innate internal spiritual power mean? It meant that he should never be able to break through 2 ranks. But not only did he break through, he was also an Earth Knight. At this moment, Han Q finally understood why Long Houchen would say that Yi Hua was the real genius. Genius didn't only refer to talent. A person with only 8 points of innate internal spiritual power was able to cultivate to the level of an Earth Knight. How could the word genius be able to describe this kind of persistence, perseverance, and wisdom? Taking a deep breath, Han Q glared at Yi Hua. Why didn't you report this matter to the higher-ups earlier? Yi Hua smiled bitterly and said, Innate internal spiritual power of 8 points isn't anything glorious, it will only make people laugh at me. Laugh at my ass, idiot. Have you ever thought about how many people among us humans have innate internal spiritual power that is lower than 10 points? That's the majority. If they can all cultivate to the 5th rank like you, what would it mean for us humans? Han Q almost roared out. At this moment, Yi Hua was shocked. In his entire life, he had been fighting against the heavens. The ridicule from the outside world had gradually formed his eccentric personality. To put it bluntly, he was self-centered and completely immersed in his own world. After listening to Han Q's words, he suddenly realized that his painstaking cultivation for the past few decades was not only helpful to himself. Although the cultivation methods that he had researched were not suitable for the little monster Long Houchen, they were suitable for the majority of people who didn't have enough talent. Han Q raised his hand, and a golden light lifted Long Houchen up from the ground. I agree to your request. Right now, I am even more curious than you to see what kind of miracles can happen from you as a teacher. Yi Hua, give me your left hand. Yes. Yi Hua's current excitement was the same as when he accepted Long Haochen as his disciple. The talent that had troubled him for his entire life could finally be changed. 10 minutes later, a rune that was exactly the same as the one on Han Qiu's palm appeared on Yi Hua's palm. Yi Hua and Long Haochen didn't discuss anything about the Retainer Knight's contract at all. They were master and disciple, as close as father and son. Even if Yi Hua became Long Haochen's Retainer Knight, so what? Would Long Haochen ask him to do anything? The absolute trust between master and disciple allowed them to make a decision without any communication. Another drop of blood fell. Yi Hua's feeling was almost 10 times stronger than Han Qiu's. When the golden halo appeared on his body spasmed due to excessive comfort, and he almost fainted. The difference in spiritual power between him and Long Haochen was as high as 89 points. After obtaining the talent suppression sharing, his innate internal spiritual power increased from 8 points to 52 points. Although he still couldn't be considered a genius, for Yi Hua, this increase in talent was enough to change his future fate. Feeling his perception of the light element increased by tens of times, feeling the change in the spiritual power in his body due to the change in talent, Yi Hua couldn't help but cry. He hugged Long Haochen and actually burst into tears. 4 decades, he had endured endless ridicule, endured the pain of being expelled by his teacher, and endured everything. It was a completely unyielding spirit that supported him to walk forward step by step. At this moment, the biggest problem that had troubled him for decades, the biggest problem that he had been fighting against for decades, was finally solved. The emotions that he had suppressed in his heart suddenly burst out like a broken dam. Seeing Yi Hua burst into tears, Han Qiu stood at the side and didn't stop him. With his experience, how could he not see that Yi Hua had suppressed his emotions for many years? At this moment, letting him release them was the best choice. His heart was clear, and it would be of great benefit to his future training. Although he wasn't young anymore, his future achievements in terms of training were limitless. No matter how strong the Son of Light was, he was the only one who was strong. However, the role that Yi Hua could play could help all the 6 major temples. Yi Hua cried for a whole 15 minutes. He cried until his eyes were red, and his tears wet the clothes on Long Haochen's shoulders. With great difficulty, he gradually restrained his emotions. Turning around, he knelt in front of Han Qiu and kowtowed. "Saint Knight Elder, thank you." Han Qiu smiled, shook his head and said, "No need to thank me. If you don't mind, you don't need to return to Haoyue City. Just follow me from now on. I am willing to pass on my many years of training experience to you." Yi Hua was smart and he was a genius of his generation. He quickly kowtowed again. "Disciple greets master." Han Qiu chuckled and helped him up with both hands. "I am the one who took advantage of you. In the future, you will definitely become a dazzling new star of our Knights Templars. Your achievements will probably not be any lower than your precious disciple." Seeing that his teacher had acknowledged him as his master, Long Haochen also quickly stepped forward and said respectfully, "Disciple Long Haochen greets master." Han Qiu was very satisfied. He was originally a straightforward person, so he immediately laughed out loud without caring about his image. Han Yu, who was at the side, looked at the scene in front of him. The trace of haze that was left in his heart had already disappeared. Putting aside the fact that his Lord Knight was his grandfather's disciple, Long Haochen's talent suppression sharing had directly increased his talent to 80 points. This had already made him consider whether he should discuss with his grandfather and extend the time of this retainer night. It seemed that Yi Hua's innate internal spiritual power had increased by more than 40 points, so he had obtained the most benefits. But in fact, the benefits that Han Yu had obtained were even more than him. Originally, Han Yu's innate internal spiritual power was 63 points. Although he was already a genius, it was still somewhat difficult for him to become a Knight of the Seal in the future. In the records of Knights Templars, the innate internal spiritual power of the strong to become a Knight of the Seal, almost all had an innate internal spiritual power of more than 70 points. If one didn't have this kind of talent, it would be possible to become a Knight of the Seal by several times. Innate internal spiritual power of 70 points was the Angel of Light constitution. Innate internal spiritual power of 80 points was the Divine Protection constitution. In other words, under Long Houchen's talent suppression sharing, his talent had directly increased by 2 levels. As long as he didn't die, breaking through to the 9th rank was only a matter of time. How could Han Yu not be excited? So what if he became a retainer knight? With such a huge increase in talent, even if he had to become a retainer knight for 20 years, it would still be worth it. I really didn't expect that this trip would actually have such a great harvest. Haha. Han Q said very proudly. Alright, let's get down to business. Long Houchen, previously in the preliminary stage, you obtained a top 10 place. According to the rules, our temple is going to reward you with a weapon. I heard from your 3rd group, our Knights Templars' supervisor, that your weapon was seriously damaged. Since that's the case, you should go ahead and collect the prize that we, Knights Templars, have given you. The weapon that the temple will reward you with depends on your luck. Tomorrow morning, Han Yu will bring you to the temple's treasure room. He will tell you what to do. In any case, you have already secured the 1st place in the 3rd group, so you don't need to participate in tomorrow's competition. Your teacher has acknowledged me as his teacher, and you have also become my grand disciple. When I go back, I will also prepare a greeting gift for each of you. I will have someone send it to you tomorrow. How can I, Han Q's grand disciple, not even have a set of equipment? Xiao Yu, from now on, you are Long Houchen's retainer. You should know what you should do. Han Yu hurriedly and respectfully said, Yes, Grandpa. I will definitely earnestly learn from Master, and I will not disappoint you again. After Han Q left, Yi Hua impatiently went back to his room to train. Long Houchen brought Han Yu back to his room. Brother Han, how about this? From now on, you can directly call me by my name. I feel a little awkward if you always call me Master. Long Houchen very sincerely said to Han Yu. Han Yu immediately shook his head resolutely and said, How can I do that? I am your retainer knight, so I naturally have to call you Master. He had already made up his mind to follow Long Houchen from now on. Son of Light. Following him was too promising. Right now, Han Yu simply couldn't be more impressed with his grandfather. His grandfather's foresight was too powerful. Becoming the Son of Light's retainer was an honor, not a disgrace. Long Houchen persuaded for a long time, but Han Yu refused to agree no matter what. Helplessly, he could only arrange a place for him to stay for the time being. The next morning, Han Yu brought Long Houchen to the temple's treasure room. Before leaving, Long Houchen asked Lin Xian to tell Kai Er that he might come back very late today, and asked Kai Er not to wait for him. The temple's treasure room was part of the Sanctuary Alliance's Great Trial Field. Just like the Great Trial Field, it was jointly managed by the Sixth Great Temple. The treasure room was located behind the Sanctuary Alliance's Great Trial Field, and it looked inconspicuous. From the outside, it was just an ordinary hexagonal building, and it seemed to only occupy an area of a few hundred square meters. At most, it looked like a slightly more luxurious residence. In front of the door, there were 2 old men dressed in cloth clothes, sitting on the chairs and chatting. They looked very leisurely. Greetings, seniors. Junior Han Yu, under the order of Holy Knight Han Q, brings our temple's Earth Knight Long Houchen to choose the prize. Han Yu respectfully went forward and bowed. Long Houchen didn't dare to be negligent, and he also bowed to the 2 old men. One of the 2 old men was fat and the other was skinny. The fat old man was a little bald, and he had a big belly. His shirt was unbuttoned and his chest was exposed. The skinny old man was like a bamboo pole, and he looked like he could be blown away by a gust of wind. Yes, Token. The the skinny old man said faintly. Han Yu quickly walked over and handed over a token. The skinny old man nodded and said, "Wait here. Long Houchen, follow me." Yes. Long Houchen agreed, and followed the skinny old man into the treasure room, while Han Yu stood at the door quietly. The skinny old man brought Long Houchen into the treasure room. As soon as he entered, Long Houchen carefully observed one of the most important places in the sacred city. The hall in the treasure room was very small, and it was only about 100 square meters. In the middle of the floor, there was a hexagonal star pattern that occupied the entire floor. The door behind him was closed, and 6 walls surrounded him. On each wall there was a huge painting. The main characters of the painting were all people. 6 walls, 6 people. From the way they were dressed, they were professionists from the 6 great temples. The people in these 6 paintings all looked very young. Among them, the ones from the Temple of the Priests and the Soul Temple were all female. The skinny old man stopped in the middle of the hexagonal star pattern, turned around, looked at Long Houchen from top to bottom, then snorted and said, "So you're Long Houchen. I don't see anything good about you." Long Houchen was a bit surprised. "Senior, do you know me?" The skinny old man didn't hold back at all. "I don't." After saying this, he moved his feet slightly and stepped on the knight's wall in the hexagram. Long Houchen didn't feel any spirit energy fluctuation, but the wall where the knight was already lit up. The skinny old man raised his right hand, and Long Houchen faintly saw something similar to a badge in his hand, flashing towards the wall where the knight was. Immediately, the wall started to glow, and the knight on it seemed to come alive. "Knights Templars, time to pick someone up," the skinny old man shouted. Suddenly, he raised his foot and kicked Long Houchen's butt. His movement was so fast that Long Houchen didn't even have time to react. He only felt his whole body go numb, and couldn't use any spirit energy at all. His whole body was sent flying towards the wall with the knight's mark. Long Houchen was so shocked that he almost cried out. Just when he thought that his whole body would be in excruciating pain, everything around him suddenly became illusory. His body actually disappeared into the wall just like that. Looking at the knight's mark on the wall, the skinny old man snorted. "A 14-year-old Earth Knight, barely passable. I don't see anything particularly good about him. What a loss, a loss. Why is that girl so stubborn? Is she really going to let this little brat of the Knights Templars take advantage of her? I really want to pinch this brat to death." As he said so, he leisurely walked out again. The fat old man who was sitting opposite him chuckled. "How was it?" The skinny old man glared at him. "Not good. Not good enough for my Kair." The fat old man laughed and said, "Don't tell me that, you should tell that to old Yang." The skinny old man sat down again, not even looking at Han Yu. He snorted and said, "I'll get even with old Yang sooner or later. In this life, that old thing actually took advantage of me. In his old age, he still let his little brat take advantage of me." The fat old man laughed. "I have to say something fair. It's not like it's for old Yang's grandson. What does it have to do with old Yang?" The skinny old man's expression suddenly became strange. "Now that you mention this, I'm a little happy. Old Yang's grandson is not even as good as this one. Haha, a few days ago that brat was almost crippled by my little girl. You didn't see the wonderful expression on old Yang's face when he came looking for me. Haha, after so many years, this is the first time I've seen him suffer. But this old man's mood didn't last long, and I heard that it's actually because of that brat. What's going on? My assassin temple seems to owe the Knights Templars." Han Yu stood at the side and pricked up his ears to listen. Vaguely, he had already heard some clues. Right at this moment, the skinny old man suddenly turned his head. "What are you listening to?" Fram. With a casual wave of his hand, Han Yu felt a strong force transmit through his body, and his entire body flew dozens of meters away as if he was riding on a cloud. This time, he was so scared that cold sweat broke out on his back. It was just a casual wave of his hand. He was at the 5th step, yet he didn't have the slightest ability to resist. Who exactly were these two old men? Their strength was probably about the same as Grandpa's, right? With their cultivation, why would they be guarding the door here? The skinny old man said disdainfully. Weasels give birth to mice, one nest is worse than the other. Han Q's grandson is even more useless. Fat old man curled his lips and said, no matter how useless he is, the overall quality of the younger generation of Knights Templars is also the best in the Alliance. You can't deny this, can you? The skinny old man said proudly, bullshit. All of them combined can't compare to my Kai. Fat old man chuckled. Little girls always have to get married. Moreover, that kid who just went in is also not bad. He seems to be about the same age as your Kai. The skinny old man froze. Damn fatty, you want to fight, don't you? Fat old man leaned against the back of the chair and said, if you are really willing to find a place to duel with me, there's no reason not to. Forget about the sneak attack. The skinny old man snorted twice, but sat back in his chair and did not say a word. In his shock, Long Houchen's body sank into the wall. He only felt a strong suction force around him, continuously tearing at his body from all directions. And at this moment, he had already regained control of his own spiritual energy. He hurriedly activated his spiritual energy to protect his body. Right at this moment, a big hand reached out from somewhere and grabbed his shoulder. With a light pull, the illusory and dark world suddenly disappeared. His eyes lit up, and Long Houchen appeared in another place. This was a place filled with the fragrance of flowers and birds. In front of him seemed to be a valley, and there was a faint golden mist enveloping the entrance of the valley. There were trees, bushes, and flowers growing around. The fresh air blew against his face. The blue sky and white clouds. The slightly moist fresh air moistened his skin, giving him an indescribable sense of comfort. The entrance of the valley was 100 meters away from him. On one side of the steep rock wall, there were 4 big words, Mount Spirit Valley. This is the treasure vault of the Knights Templars? Long Houchen stared at everything in front of him, dumbstruck. With his knowledge, he could not understand everything that had happened here. Welcome, little friend. A deep voice appeared behind Long Houchen. He hurriedly turned around, and Long Houchen immediately saw it. Behind him stood an old man, as if he was the one who had pulled him over just now. And behind him, there was a strange door of light. This door of light was somewhat similar to the living spirit gate that Chen-ing-er had released back then, but the patterns around the door of light were much more complicated. There were also no animal carvings, but many ancient elves. Strange, isn't it? The old man was tall and slender. His silver hair was draped over his back, and he wore a simple white robe. In this beautiful environment, he gave off a feeling of floating in the air. His forehead was broad and his forehead was full. Although his face was covered with the frost of time, his eyes were still bright and full of spirit. His body was of average height, but he didn't look too muscular. But standing there, he looked like a giant pillar that could support the sky. Greetings, Senior. Long Houchen hurriedly and respectfully bowed to him as a knight. The old man smiled and said, I am Yang Howen, you can call me Grandfather Yang. Long Houchen hurriedly bowed again. Greetings, Grandfather Yang. Yang Howen smiled and patted his shoulder. Are you curious about everything here? Actually, this place was not built by us Knights Templars. It was passed down from the glorious era. It was built by the ancient elves. Not only here, but the other 5 temples' treasure pavilions are also the same. Simply put, this is a parallel space created by the ancient elves using their control over the laws of heaven and earth to attach to our original space. Then, at the beginning of the Dark Age, it was accepted by us humans, and after some modifications, it became what it is today. Although Long Houchen didn't really understand, he had some impression of it. He recalled everything he saw on the night's holy mountain. If it was just now. Yang Haohan smiled. To be honest, if it wasn't for us humans obtaining some of the wealth left behind by the ancient elves during the Dark Age, I'm afraid our human race would no longer exist. Long Haochen's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't ask anything. This was obviously related to the secrets of the 6 temples. If this grandfather Yang in front of him wanted to say something, he would definitely tell him. Go, there will be your reward in the valley, but there will also be a test waiting for you. Be prepared. After entering the valley, there will be a fork. Follow the fork on the leftmost side. You will get your opportunity. Thank you, Grandfather Yang. Long Haochen respectfully replied. He walked towards the direction of the Riding Spirit Valley. The distance of 100 meters was covered in the blink of an eye, and he stepped into the thick pale golden fog. After entering the fog, Long Haochen suddenly felt different. The air seemed to have suddenly become heavy, and a pressure as heavy as a mountain instantly came. This caused his originally light footsteps to become heavy. The liquid spiritual power in his body was stimulated and protected itself. The surface of Long Haochen's body was covered with a layer of golden halo. Since breaking through to the 5th rank, Long Haochen clearly felt that his cultivation speed had slowed down. Originally, he could increase his spiritual power by dozens of times a day. It had returned to single digit. After 10 days or so, his total inner spiritual power was only about 2030 points. On the contrary, because of Hao Yue's evolution, his external spiritual power seemed to have increased by quite a bit. The battle with Wang Yuan made Long Haochen realize that external spiritual power was equally important. It was very obvious that Wang Yuan's external spiritual power should be far beyond that of ordinary people. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to so easily use the unembedded state of the Divine Giant Soul Shield. If it wasn't for Hao Yue, in a situation where he didn't have a comparable weapon, he really wouldn't have been her opponent. Right now, the circulation of the liquid spiritual power in his body was very different from when he was cultivating. In the past, when he was cultivating, his internal spiritual power revolved around the saint's spiritual stove. But now it had become the complete opposite. The golden liquid spiritual power formed a ring of spiritual power, like a moat, quietly revolving around the saint's spiritual stove. But the saint's spiritual stove was still slowly revolving. Along with Long Haochen's cultivation, the liquid spiritual power refined increased. It was always flung out from the saint's spiritual stove and integrated into the outer ring of liquid spiritual power. Long Haochen also knew that he couldn't be too hasty in his cultivation. The reason why he could increase dozens of spiritual power points every day when he was about to break through was because he ate the spirit-gathering pill given by Lin Xian. The other reason was because he constantly stimulated his potential in battle. And after the breakthrough, the liquid spiritual power cultivation was much more complicated. During the month, his potential that was stimulated was also almost consumed. Steady and sure, gradually improving was the most correct choice. He was only 14 years old this year, so he had plenty of time. The goal that Long Haochen set for himself was to become a Radiance Knight before the age of 18, and become a Temple Knight before the age of 25. Advancing rashly was obviously the most undesirable. Yihua had also emphasized this to him many times. Although the pressure inside the faint golden fog was extremely great, Long Haochen could rely on his powerful spiritual power to feel that the light elements here were much richer than the outside world. The fog wasn't made up of moist water vapor. Instead, it was moist light element. In other words, the light elements here seemed to be in a liquid state. Unfortunately, this wasn't something that Long Haochen could absorb. These light elements didn't repel him, but when he tried to absorb them, the surrounding pressure suddenly increased, almost causing his protective spiritual power to collapse. Long Haochen was so scared that he hurriedly guarded his mind and released a holy light barrier. Only then did he avoid the collapse of his own defense. He didn't dare to make any strange movements and just carefully moved forward. Not long after, the scenery ahead suddenly became clear. The other directions were still blurry, but a path appeared on the left side. This path was only 3 meters wide, and on both sides were towering cliffs. The cliffs were as smooth as a mirror, and with Long Houchen's current cultivation, he obviously couldn't climb them. It should be here, Long Houchen observed for a bit. Then, he walked toward the path. After leaving the range of the golden fog, his body suddenly became light. As the pressure was reduced, Long Houchen felt the spiritual power in his body surge slightly. This path wasn't straight, but winding, so he could only see the cliffs, but couldn't figure out what was at the end. Following the path forward, he walked for about a quarter of an hour. Suddenly, there were more than 10 forks in front of him. Each fork in the road was flanked by precipitous cliff. This can't be naturally formed, otherwise it would be too uncanny. Long Houchen looked at the forks in shock and thought to himself, "What should I do? Grandfather Yang didn't tell me there were forks. What should I choose? Should I still choose the leftmost fork?" Stopping, Long Houchen fell into deep thought. Although he wasn't old, he was calm and didn't blindly enter. He didn't know why. A sense of unease rose in his heart. Long Houchen carefully recalled what Yang Haohan said to him, not missing a single word. His strong memory played an important role at this time. Grandfather Yang said that I have to go through a test to get the reward. Could this be a test or part of a test? While thinking, Long Houchen immediately sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. Previously, when he passed through the fog of light, his spiritual power had been consumed to a certain extent. Since he had to face a test, then, maintaining his peak condition was obviously very important. In this Mount Spiritual Valley, the light element was denser than the outside world. Although the light element here was not as dense as in the fog just now, but it was still very abundant. Relying on the physique of the Scion of Light, Long Houchen recovered to his peak condition in a short while. At this time, suddenly, Long Houchen's mind moved slightly. He sensed an extremely pure light elemental aura fluctuating slightly. Long Houchen suddenly opened his eyes, his gaze instantly locked in a direction. Chapter 39. Although that extremely pure light wave only flashed for a moment, with his strong perception, he was able to detect it. He still remembered the direction in an instant. There were a total of 10 forks in front of him, and the direction he remembered was the third one from the left. Without further hesitation, Long Houchen stood up and strode towards the third fork in the road. Less than 100 meters into the fork, the feeling from before appeared again. That's right, it was this direction. Long Houchen thought to himself, a place with such a strong light elemental fluctuation should naturally be my destination. He continued forward for a while. When he turned a corner, suddenly, a strange door of light appeared in front of him. This door of light was different from the one he had teleported through. It was much smaller. It was about 2 meters tall. It was 1 meter wide and oval in shape. Inside the door of light, there was a faint golden halo, but the edges were aqua blue. Am I going to step into this door of light? Long Houchen stopped in his tracks. Standing in front of the door of light, he immediately felt that the extremely pure light elemental fluctuation had come from this door of light. But it was not continuous, but randomly appearing from time to time. As the Son of Light, Long Houchen was born with a great affinity for light elemental fluctuations. Not only the light elemental fluctuations towards him, but he was also the same towards light elemental fluctuations. As long as he felt the presence of light elemental fluctuations, he would subconsciously rule out dangerous situations. After hesitating for a moment, Long Houchen took a deep breath and stepped into the door of light. This time, he did not feel any discomfort, only a soft halo around him. It was just a sway. He felt his feet on the ground again. The next moment, everything became real again. This was a cave, surrounded by irregular rocks. He stepped into this place. Long Houchen only felt that he had returned to the real world, and the next moment it became dreamy. Two rays of light, one blue and one gold, suddenly lit up, illuminating the entire cave. The blue was like the vast sea, full of inclusiveness and the crystalline beauty of blue. The gold was like the morning sun, warm, bright, full of vitality, but not dazzling. It was exuberant vitality, a light that drove away the darkness. This is Long Houchen's eyes instantly blurred. These two pure colors were so beautiful that he was immersed in them. Especially that golden color, when he saw it. He felt as if he had returned to the moment when his father helped him complete the divine awakening. The liquid spiritual power in his body was also emitted on its own, causing his body to flicker. His entrance seemed to have startled the gold and blue lights that filled the entire cavern. The two lights paused at the same time. But the feeling they gave Long Houchen was completely different. The blue light was crystal and probing, while the golden light paused for a moment. He immediately felt a strong sense of intimacy. He suddenly pounced on Long Houchen. Long Houchen didn't do anything. He just stood there silently as the golden light enveloped his face. When his body was enveloped by the golden light, he felt his entire body become warm, and the spiritual power in his body suddenly increased in speed. It was an indescribable restraint. Although he couldn't see his surroundings clearly, only the golden light in front of him, the increasingly strong sense of intimacy filled Long Houchen's heart with satisfaction. He felt the truth of light, the endless pure light, and his entire body was immersed. Vaguely, Long Houchen's body became gradually transparent under the cover of the golden light. He let the golden light pass through his body, circling around him. If someone saw this scene, they would definitely cry out in shock. The body of light was a powerful symbolic ability of the Knight of the Seventh Step. It could transform into light and merge with light. At this time, Long Houchen was only at the fifth step, and he had just stepped into the fifth step. But he did it. Even if it was a complete version of the body of light. He couldn't let external light easily pass through his body. But he did it. This was the constitution of the Son of Light. He had an affinity with light, which gave him absolute trust in all light elements. And the light elements also treated him as the ruler of light, the child of the God of light. Kind, gentle, and full of endless intimacy. After an unknown amount of time, the golden light quietly retreated. Long Houchen's body also returned to normal. But, at this time, he suddenly felt a sense of danger. Suddenly opening his eyes, Long Houchen saw a blue figure. Seeing this figure, he couldn't help but be shocked. Because this blue figure looked exactly like him. But its body was transparent blue. A strong pressure suddenly came from the body that seemed to be formed by the blue light. The next moment, he raised his arms. Two blue heavy swords extended from his hands. Attack. At this moment, Long Houchen didn't even have any weapons on him. And he had just woken up from the wonderful feeling. He instinctively activated the spirit light bracer on his wrist. A layer of holy light rose up, and the pale golden light blocked the blue light's attack. Poof! The huge impact caused Long Houchen to retreat in an instant. The two blue heavy swords simultaneously activated lightning stab, like rain falling on a banana leaf, hitting the holy light barrier. In just a second, the holy light barrier shattered, and the blue light rushed up, heading straight for Long Houchen. With this short buffer, Long Houchen was able to react. His hands also separated from his body, and two slightly slender golden long swords appeared in his hands. Spiritual weapon condensation. This was a weapon that was formed from spiritual energy. Although he didn't know what was attacking him, he could clearly feel that he was facing himself at this moment. In this situation, how could he resist without a weapon? Spiritual weapon condensation referred to the condensation of spiritual energy into a weapon, which could only be done after reaching the 5th rank. Long Houchen was currently only an Earth Knight level 1, so it was very difficult for him to use it. Moreover, spiritual weapon condensation consumed a lot of spiritual energy, so he wouldn't use it unless he had no other choice. With his Son of Light constitution, condensing these two thin swords directly consumed more than 500 points of inner spiritual energy. And during the process of battle, his spiritual energy would continue to be consumed. Facing the blue light's lightning stab, the thin swords in Long Houchen's hands also moved. The golden light flashed, and he actually used his sword to break the sword. Without using any skills, he blocked all of the blue light's attack. The blue light seemed to only know how to attack like lightning stab, and its speed suddenly increased. Thousands of blue sword shadows attacked like quicksilver. At this moment, Long Houchen felt like he had returned to the owl ant's cave. The two swords in his hands flew up and down, but his mind was still calm. No matter how fast the opponent's attacks were, he blocked them one by one. Long Houchen found that the opponent's attacks weren't very strong, and he could easily block them with spiritual weapon condensation. But, even though Long Houchen didn't use any skills, his own spiritual energy was still being consumed quickly. According to this situation, it didn't seem to be advantageous. At this moment, Long Houchen suddenly found something strange. His perceptive sense was much higher than ordinary people, and while blocking the blue light's storm-like attacks, he also had the ability to observe the opponent. He found that the blue light's color seemed to have dimmed a lot. With each attack, its body would also become dimmer. During this period of time in the Monster Hunters selection tournament, Long Houchen had also experienced a lot of matches, some wins and some losses. Especially when facing a strong opponent, it was extremely important for him to increase his combat experience. Long Houchen realized that in battle, not only did he have to pay attention to his own situation, but he also had to pay attention to the enemy's situation. It wasn't to observe the enemy's attack skills, but to observe the enemy's body and the strength of their spiritual energy. He was gradually developing this habit of observation. When the blue light first used lightning stab, it was clearly the most powerful, but when it broke through his holy light shroud, its attack power seemed to have decreased a lot. The holy light shroud obviously couldn't hurt the opponent, so why did its attack power suddenly decrease? And what about his own situation at that time? Thinking about it this way, Long Houchen realized the mystery behind it. The blue light's spiritual energy strength seemed to be about the same as his own, and his spiritual energy decreased. As a result, its spiritual power would decline. When he used spiritual weapon condensation, his spiritual energy was greatly depleted, so its spiritual energy was also reduced, and its attack power was naturally affected. It was the same now. If that's the case, I just need to focus on defense. Just as Long Houchen was thinking, suddenly, the blue light's figure paused for a moment. Its body soared into the air and spun rapidly. It was the fighting slaying revolving sword. It copied my skill? Long Houchen was shocked. He himself knew the fighting slaying revolving sword, so he naturally knew how powerful this skill was when it was used. However, at this moment, Long Houchen smiled. As he quickly retreated, he quickly chanted an incantation and raised the golden swords in both hands. At this moment, his powerful spiritual energy suddenly erupted, and he split his attention into 3 parts. The light sword in his left hand rippled with 3 halos: Faith Halo, Guardian Blessing, and True Shot Halo. The light sword in his right hand lit up with a dense white light. A dense white light lit up. It was the holy sword accumulating power. When his cultivation was at the 5th rank, he could use the holy sword again. He no longer needed to chant an incantation, and only needed to go through the process of accumulating spiritual energy. At the same time, the holy light shroud on his spiritual light shroud was released, blocking the blue figure's first attack. As he retreated, Long Houchen's incantation was completed. Angel's Blessing. Then, a loud dragon's roar resounded around Long Houchen's body. Under the dense golden light, the spiritual energy around his body turned into scales, and he held the swords in both hands. It was the Rising Dragon Strike. Rising Dragon Strike was an attack skill that both the Guardian Knight and the Punishment Knight could learn. When Long Houchen's cultivation reached the 5th rank, he naturally learned it from his father's inheritance ring. However, when he used this attack, the holy sword in his right hand was not completed. Puff! The two sides collided in the air, but in an instant, the blue figure had already collapsed, turning into countless blue specks of light that scattered in all directions. Bang! Long Houchen's feet landed on the ground. His upper body swayed slightly, and his vision darkened. In that short period of time, he had used so many skills that even his extraordinary spiritual energy could not support it, and his face was pale. At this moment, the two swords in his hands had already dispersed. From start to finish, the holy sword skill in his right hand had not been completed. However, he won. He defeated the blue figure just like that. For the knight, it was very easy for Long Houchen to do this. The reason why he was able to win was because he had correctly judged the blue figure. The blue figure copied his skills and spiritual energy intensity. The skills did not change, but the spiritual energy intensity was adjusted according to his body. Under such circumstances, as Long Houchen continued to resist, the blue figure's attack would never stop. If he was not careful, he would be taken advantage of. However, what if he ran out of spiritual energy? What else could the blue figure use to attack? Long Houchen had used so many skills in a row not to defeat his opponent, but to exhaust his remaining spiritual energy as quickly as possible. Especially when he was about to exhaust his spiritual energy, he used his final skill. Without spiritual energy to support it, the battle-slaying revolving sword naturally could not withstand the impact of the Rising Dragon Strike, so the blue figure dissipated. All of this seemed simple, but in reality, it was a combination of wisdom and strength. If Long Houchen had not blocked the blue figure's storm-like attack and not been injured, if he had not made a correct judgment and made a prompt decision, it was hard to say who would win this battle. Although the blue figure did not have any real killing intent, Long Houchen could vaguely feel that if he lost, he would probably lose something. Everything returned to darkness. All the light disappeared. In the darkness, only Long Houchen's light breathing could be heard. Suddenly, right in front of Long Houchen, a flash of light shone. Under the illumination of that light, everything around him became clear. A cave. It was still a cave, but it was a lot smaller than when he first saw it. In front of Long Houchen, there was a small circular platform. That light came from the center of the platform. It was a sword floating on the platform. The blade was facing down, the hilt was above. Compared to the traditional knight heavy sword, this sword was a bit smaller. The blade was about 3 feet 6 inches long, from the edge to the hilt. The total length was about 1 foot 2 inches. In total, it was 4 feet 8 inches. The blade was golden, but it was a reserved golden color. There were many fine inscriptions on the sword's spine. These inscriptions combined to form a strange hibiscus flower shape, all the way to the edge of the sword. The color of the edge changed, it was no longer golden, but a deep blue. The edge was wide and thick, carved into the shape of a dragon's head. The golden blade looked like it was spat out from the dragon's mouth, and the hilt that extended downwards was the dragon's body. Although the size of the dragon's body and the dragon's head were somewhat disproportionate, there was a strange sense of harmony. The deep blue sword's hilt rippled with a gentle blue halo. In the middle of the edge, where the dragon's eye should be, there was an oval golden gem that was slightly bigger than a gold coin inlaid on each side. The dragon's tail, which was closed at the end of the sword's hilt, had 3-inch-long forks which looked very sharp. Where the forks converged, there was an aqua blue gem on each side. Seeing this sword, Long Houchen's eyes almost instantly widened. Ever since he became a knight, he had seen many weapons and equipment, especially the heavy sword that he used the most. Naturally, he paid the most attention to it. However, He had never seen a sword that could be forged as dazzling as the one in front of him. More importantly, he seemed to be able to feel that this sword was breathing, as if it had a life of its own. As soon as he stepped in, he felt the aura of the golden and blue light appear again. But this time, it was much gentler. Especially the golden halo that rippled on the blade, it attracted Long Houchen step by step towards it. It was too beautiful. It was truly too beautiful. It was flawless. When Long Houchen's consciousness was slightly clearer, he was surprised to find that he had already stepped on the platform, standing right in front of this sword. He forcefully swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Is this the prize that Knights Templars gave me for the preliminary round? Even just by looking at it, he could feel how precious this sword was. He carefully raised his right hand and slowly held the hilt that was just inches away from him. In an instant, Long Houchen felt a strong suction force firmly pulling his palm, followed by a sharp pain coming from the center of his palm. Although he was shocked, Long Houchen did not try to let go of his palm, because he could clearly feel that the aura from this sword was telling him that it would not hurt him. Drops of blood flowed down Long Houchen's palm, into the hilt, and into the golden gem on the edge of the sword. The blood flowed upwards, soaking through the dragon's body, all the way to the blue gem on the dragon's tail. A violent tremor appeared in the next instant, and the long sword in his hand suddenly emitted thousands of rays of light. Long Houchen almost instinctively raised the longsword above his head. Golden light filled the sky, blue light coiled, and turned into a huge pillar of light that shot straight to the top of the cave. A strong spiritual fluctuation exploded in an instant. A cool and warm air instantly entered his palm, and in an instant, the pain in Long Houchen's palm disappeared. At the same time, 6 words slowly appeared in his mind in sequence. Blue Rain, Hibiscus of Light. This was its name. Outside spirited Mount Valley. Yang Houhen had been quietly standing in the same place, looking in the direction of the valley. At this moment, there was one more person beside him. It was the Holy Knight of Knights Templars, Han Yen. Lord, do you think he can subdue that sword? So many years have passed, and countless people have tried, but they have all failed. This includes his father. Yang Houhen smiled slightly and said, I hope he succeeds. This sword, Blue Rain, Hibiscus of Light, was passed down from the glorious era. It was originally 2 swords, but they were later fused into one by a divine smith. This sword has its own sword spirit, and was sealed by the ancient elven royal family with a psionic storm. Anyone who gets close to it will be pulled into the seal for a test. Only those who pass the test have a chance of obtaining it. No one knows to what extent the power of this Blue Rain, Hibiscus of Light can reach. According to the records left behind by the ancient elven royal family, they call this sword the Sword of Miracles. Ever since it was forged, it has never had a master, because no one has been able to gain the recognition of the 2 sword spirits. Therefore, the high elven royal family sealed it here with a psionic storm, waiting for the fated one. It is said that the most amazing thing about this Sword of Miracles is that as long as it recognizes its master, it will only be used by that master. It is like a bloodline equipment. No matter how strong its master is, it will have corresponding strength. The 2 sword spirits will grow with the growth of their master. Have you ever heard of weapons and equipment that can grow? Moreover, it can grow on its own without the need for any embedding or inscription. This is something that even a divine artifact can't do. Han Q's eyes were full of surprise, as expected of the Sword of Miracles. If that's the case, if Houchen can get its approval, then this sword can continue to be used. Yang Houhen laughed, Don't ask me. No one has owned this sword, and there are no records of its use. Who can say for sure? Han Qian chuckled and said, Hall Master, you bled a lot this time. Yang Houhen smiled faintly and said, No one can use this sword anyway, so why not let him have a try? Xing Yu, that old guy, even gave the sword of Samsara to the saint of Samsara. We, the Knights Templars, also have a sun of light. It's just a blue rain and hibiscus of light. Are we still not willing to take it out? We can't lose to them. I didn't expect Xingyu to have such a son. But I don't understand why he didn't send his son to the temple to train him when he found out that he has the constitution of the Son of Light. Han Qiu said, maybe it's for the heart's temperament. Yang Haohan was slightly stunned, but immediately understood. He said, you mean Xingyu wants this child to become stronger through training in the outside world. This way, he will have a stronger survival ability. Han Qiu smiled and nodded. He said, at least for now, in my eyes, this child is absolutely qualified to be a knight. It's rare to see someone at his age. Good talent also needs to appear in the right person, only then can it blossom the most resplendent brilliance. Just as he said this, in the distance, in the Riding Spirit Valley, a bright light shot up into the sky. Gold and blue, the two colors blended. The gold light was in the center, and the blue light was outside. In an instant, the blue sky and white clouds in the sky dimmed. It really worked. Yang Haohan's eyes showed a hint of surprise. Han Qiu's mouth was wide open. That's too fast. This. Yang Haohan laughed heartily and said, I've already expected this. This child has the constitution of the Son of Light. Although blue rain and hibiscus of light are dual attributes, they are mainly light. Will the light attribute attack him when it meets the constitution of the Son of Light? Don't worry, just wait. He still needs to go through a process of fusion. Han Qiu frowned and said, sigh, now that I think about it, the other equipment I prepared for him is a little unpresentable. Yang Haohan looked at him meaningfully. He said, you just explained it to me, why can't you understand it yourself? We can't spoil things through excessive enthusiasm. He has to rely on his own efforts to move forward step by step, and finally surpass us. Oh right, is there any news from Xingyu? Han Qiu sighed and shook his head. Not yet. After his battle with Anan was seriously injured, and he disappeared. Yang Haohan nodded. He said, tell the relevant people to treat this matter as top secret. Especially not to tell this child Haochen. I don't want his temperament to be affected. In the letter Xingyu left me, he said that if he can't return after his battle with Anan, I can't tell Haochen before he breaks through to the seventh demon god. Han Qiu sighed. He said, I really don't understand why Palace Master Long had to challenge the seventh demon god. He could have just not agreed to that challenge. Yang Haohan shook his head. He said, no, he has to go. This is his responsibility. If you can break through to the ninth demon god in your lifetime, you will also know what this responsibility is. Continue to have people investigate Anan's injuries. Yes. Han Qiu nodded in response. Yang Haohan sighed inwardly. Xingyu, oh Xingyu, why didn't you tell us in the letter that this little Haochen has the constitution of the Son of Light? Could it be to give us a surprise? Don't worry, no matter what happens to you, I will help you look after your son. I will help him become the next you. No, he will even surpass you. The Son of Light. Perhaps he has the possibility of sitting on the first throne of God. Bathed in the golden infiltration and blue nourishment, Long Haochen gradually entered a strange state. He vaguely felt that there was something extra in his body. His entire body felt like it was soaking in warm spring water. It was indescribably comfortable. After an unknown period of time, Long Haochen gradually woke up. He was surprised to find that he was standing at the entrance of the spirited Mount Valley. Not far in front of him was the rippling golden fog. Long Haochen subconsciously looked at his right hand. However, his right hand was empty. However, his arm was still in a raised position. Where's the sword? Where's my blue rain and hibiscus of light? Long Haochen immediately looked around anxiously. He didn't find the sword, but he saw a person. Yang Haohan looked at him with a smile. Don't look for it. It's in your body. In my body? Long Haochen looked at Yang Haohan in surprise. Grandfather Yang, what's going on? Yang Haohan smiled. This is a miraculous sword. In view of your outstanding performance in the preliminary round, we, the Knights Templars, decided to let you try and see if you can pass its test. You know the result yourself. You passed, so it's yours now. Long Haochen asked doubtfully, then what do you mean by it entering my body? Yang Haohan smiled. Don't worry. I will tell you everything I know about Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light. Even I don't know what kind of power this sword has. Since the day it was created, no one has ever used it. But according to the temple's research over the years, it's certain that it's a spiritual weapon. Long Haochen was surprised. Spiritual weapon? What's a spiritual weapon? Yang Haohan said, a spiritual weapon is a spiritual weapon. I believe you've been tested by it. That's right, it's the sword spirit's test for you. Although a sword spirit doesn't have true spiritual intelligence, it has its instincts. A weapon with a weapon spirit has unlimited possibilities. Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light have unlimited potential, but you should also know that the more powerful a weapon is, the more ability is needed to use it. But this sword doesn't need to be like that because it will grow along with you. Right now, it should have already fused with your body. Its own ability will nourish your body, and your spirit force will nurture its continuous growth. Simply put, this is a weapon that can evolve. You can use your inner vision to look for it. Hearing this, Long Haochen hurriedly used his inner vision. Once he used his inner vision, he immediately discovered that a strange change had occurred within his body. The originally rotating Saint's spiritual stove and his own liquid spiritual power didn't have any changes. Moreover, the spiritual power that was exhausted during the test had already been completely restored. The strange thing was that above the Saint's spiritual stove floated a miniature sword. Looking at its appearance, wasn't it Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light? Faint gold and blue rippled with a soft golden blue luster. Long Haochen used his inner vision to sense that Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light were bathing in his liquid spiritual power. They seemed to be faintly absorbing his liquid spiritual power. The absorption rate wasn't large, but it was more like they were being nourished by the spiritual power. And the golden blue luster it emitted was slowly spreading, dispersing into every corner of his body. It stimulated his body to constantly produce a soft and warm feeling. This feeling was very slight, and if he didn't concentrate, he wouldn't be able to discover it. But he could vaguely feel that this light seemed to be strengthening his body. What life needs the most is light and water. For plants, as long as there is light and water, they can survive. Although humans have more needs, light and water are also what the human body needs the most. According to our many years of research and judgment, it should be helpful in strengthening your external spiritual power. But this requires a subtle process, and can't be accomplished in one step. Yang Haohan's voice reached Long Haochen's ears, awakening him from his state of concentration. Opening his eyes, Long Haochen slowly raised his right hand. His mind connected with the miniature sword above the Saint's spiritual stove. With a slight movement of his mind, a ray of light flashed, and the dragon-shaped sword hilt appeared in his hand. The golden blade seemed to have spat out from the dragon's mouth on the hilt of the sword, glittering with golden light. Compatibility. When Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light appeared again, Long Haochen's first feeling was compatibility. It was completely different from the first time he held this sword. At this moment, he only felt that this sword was like a part of his body. Some strange and mysterious things were slowly appearing in his consciousness. It seemed that this sword was telling him something. Yang Haohan faintly smiled and said, "Go back and slowly experience it. Tomorrow, the finals of the top 16 will begin. This old man wishes you a good result in advance." Tomorrow? Long Haochen was startled. "Didn't you say that I can rest for 2 days after the end of the group stage?" Yang Haohan smiled and said, "Little guy, you've already been here for 3 days. Do you think it's that easy to fuse with a spiritual tool?" You being able to complete it in 3 days already proves that your compatibility with it is quite astonishing. Your teacher's side has already been notified by someone from the temple, so there's no need to worry. It's already been 3 days? Long Haochen was surprised and hastily bid farewell to Yang Haohan. Under Yang Haohan's guidance, he once again stepped into the huge light door. A ray of light flashed through the wall. Long Haochen had already returned to the small hall of the Holy Alliance's Treasury Pavilion. The surroundings were empty and no one appeared. By then, Long Haochen had already understood that there was probably no need for any guards here. Without special means, it was impossible to enter the Treasury Pavilion. In fact, there were only a few people in any temple who were qualified to enter the Treasury Pavilion of the Holy Alliance and take care of the Holy Alliance's temple. When he walked out of the Treasury Pavilion, there were still 2 people guarding outside, but they weren't the fat and skinny old men from that day. Instead, they were 2 middle-aged men who looked harmless and were dressed in plain clothes. At most, they looked to be in their 40s. The 2 of them kindly smiled at Long Haochen. Were they really harmless? Long Haochen wanted to investigate their situation carefully, but he was shocked to find that the 2 middle-aged men gave him the feeling that they were actually quiet and distant, as if they didn't have any ability, yet they seemed to be as deep as the abyss. This was indeed the headquarters of the Holy Alliance. He really didn't know how many experts there were in this sacred city. After bowing to the 2 middle-aged men in a hurry, Long Haochen then walked quickly. "Master!" Han Yu's voice sounded, and he greeted him from the side. "You have been waiting for me?" Long Haochen looked at him in surprise. Han Yu nodded and said, "I am your retainer knight, so naturally, I have to follow you." It was very obvious that he had already completely understood his position. Long Haochen smiled very brightly, and didn't say anything else. He brought Han Yu back to the hotel. What made Long Haochen a little depressed was that regardless of whether it was his teacher or sister, they were all training in the room. Actually, he most wanted to ask Li Xian about how Kai Air was these few days. But it wasn't good to disturb their training. Helplessly, he could only return to his room and train himself. With regards to the hibiscus of light, he still had a lot to understand, otherwise, how would he be able to bring out its power? Early morning, Yihua knocked on Long Haochen's door. Seeing his teacher again, Long Haochen got a shock, because he discovered to his surprise that the gloominess on his teacher's face had actually completely disappeared, and instead, he had a feeling of being in high spirits. It was as if in these few days, he had actually become 10 years younger. "Teacher Yu," Yihua chuckled, the muscles on his face didn't seem to be that stiff anymore. I finally broke through to 3,000 spiritual energy level. In the past, I kept telling myself as if I was hypnotized that talent wasn't important. But these few days, for the first time, I experienced the importance of talent in training. After so many years of accumulation, I finally have the opportunity to make a breakthrough. Long Haochen, thank you. No. Long Haochen immediately felt a little embarrassed. "Teacher, this is what I should do. It's good that I was able to help you." Yihua smiled and said, "All right, there is no need to say those courteous words between us teacher and disciple. These were given to you by your grandmaster. After the competition ends, your teacher will also stay in the sacred city to train with your grandmaster. And you will also have to join the monster hunters to train. These equipment will be very useful to you." Chapter 40. As he spoke, he took out something that looked like a bracelet and pointed at the ground beside Long Haochen. Suddenly, there was a flash of light, and several pieces of equipment appeared there. Without a doubt, this bracelet had a similar function to the forget-me-not ring. Although this kind of storage bracelet was rare, Han Q was the leader of the Knights Templars, the Holy Knight, so it was not surprising that he had it. Equipment? One would only know how to cherish it after losing it. Long Haochen had deeply experienced the helplessness of losing all his equipment before. As soon as he heard that there was equipment that could be used, His eyes immediately lit up, and he couldn't wait to look at the equipment. It was a full body armor, a sword, and a shield. These 3 pieces of equipment were all silver in color, and they exuded a faint aura of light. It felt like they should be of the same level as his previous armor and light sword. At most, they were slightly stronger. However, even so, it was already a great surprise for Long Houchen. After losing the shield and light sword, he did not stop asking about the price of magic equipment. Each of them cost thousands of gold coins, which made people flinch at the sight of it. To be able to gather a set, he was already very satisfied. Yi Hua smiled and said, "This set of equipment is called the Holy Spirit set. Holy Spirit armor, Holy Spirit shield, Holy Spirit sword. If taken out individually, they are all magic equipment. But the advantage is that it is a set. When combined together, it can produce the Holy Spirit halo. You can control your allies according to your thoughts. The radius of the halo reaches a diameter of 20 meters. It can form a layer of Holy Spirit armor on the surface of the body, and its defense is comparable to the Holy Light Barrier. Maintaining this halo requires 5 points of spiritual power. This is a very good Guardian Knight equipment, and it is very useful for the team. So, when combined, this set is equivalent to a Spirit Demon equipment. It is even better than the Holy Light Bracelet that teacher gave you." "Great." Long Houchen squatted down excitedly. He first put the Holy Spirit sword and Holy Spirit shield into the Forget-Me-Not ring, and then put on the Holy Spirit armor. A faint smile appeared on Yi Hua's face. This child really has a pure and kind nature. He didn't despise the fact that this was only a magic rank equipment given by a Holy Knight captain. The excitement in his eyes couldn't be faked. "Teacher, if you see the Grandmaster, you must thank him for me. I will definitely use this equipment to win glory for our Knights Templars." The Holy Spirit armor was not heavy, and it was indeed of better quality than his original armor. This Holy Spirit armor was not heavy, and it was indeed better than his original armor. This armor was not heavy, and it was indeed better than his original armor. Yi Hua patted his shoulder and said, "All right, go to the Sanctuary Alliance's trial field with your big sister Exhilarating. From now on, it will be a knockout competition. Everyone only one chance, and each one. Everyone one chance. One chance. One. Everyone one chance, one chance. Try to get into the top 3. I guarantee to complete the mission." Long Houchen thumped his chest with his right fist and performed a standard knight's salute to Yi Hua. After he said that, the teacher and disciple couldn't help but laugh. On the other side, Hao Yue, who was curled up on Long Houchen's bed, slowly raised his 3 heads and shook his body. His heavy body immediately made the bed creak. "I won't forget about you." Long Houchen laughed at him. After getting the new armor, Long Houchen was very excited. He even wore the armor for breakfast. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, under Yi Hua's gaze, he went to the Holy Alliance's great training field with Lin Exhilarating. As for his squire, he didn't have the right to watch the battle. Long Houchen let Han Yu stay in the hotel to train. "Big sister, how is Kair these few days? She isn't angry at me, right?" Long Houchen asked Lin Exhilarating. Lin Exhilarating giggled and said, "Look at how careful you are. We haven't confirmed our relationship yet, and you are already so worried about her. She will definitely be a henpecked husband in the future." Long Houchen blushed and quickly explained, "Big sister, we are just ordinary friends." Lin Exhilarating laughed and said, Okay. Ordinary friends, right? Then you can go and find out about her situation yourself." Long Houchen suddenly became a little anxious. He pulled Lin Exhilarating's arm and said, "Big sister, I was wrong. Tell me quickly." Lin Exhilarating rolled her eyes and said, "You've been exposed." Okay, big sister promises that you will be able to see her today." No matter how long Houchen asked, Lin Exhilarating refused to say when she would be able to see Kair. Not long after, the siblings arrived at the Holy Alliance's great training field. The top 16 finals would be held at the night's great training field. All the contestants who entered the top 60 could come and watch the battle. When the two arrived at the entrance, they met a familiar face. Two men walked over from not far away and handed over their number plates at the entrance. They were Yang Wenjiao and Huang Yi. It seemed that the two of them knew each other long ago. Brother Yang, Brother Huang, nice to meet you. Although they were competitors, they already knew each other. When Long Haochen and Lin Xian walked over, he took the initiative to greet them. When Yang Wenjiao saw him, his expression changed and he said with a bitter face, "I'm not too good. I'm just hoping that I don't get you when it comes to drawing lots." With that, he hurried in. Looking at him as if he had met a ghost, Long Haochen couldn't help but be a little stunned. What's wrong with him? Was this still the same expert who defeated him without a mount the other day? Could it be that he doesn't have the confidence to face me? Yang Wenjiao naturally wasn't afraid of him. If it was a head-on battle, he even had the confidence to fight Kai. However, the strongest aspect of an assassin was obviously not in a head-on battle. He really didn't want to be targeted by an assassin of Kai Er's level. Especially since his grandfather didn't pursue the matter that day, one could imagine how shocking the assassin's background was. When Huang Yi saw that Long Haochen was much better, he smiled and greeted him. "Brother Huang, I didn't go to the competition that day. Between you and Wang Yuanyuan, who advanced in the end?" Long Haochen asked curiously. Huang Yi said with a hint of pride, "Lucky, lucky." Wang Yuanyuan's strength was indeed very strong. In a head-on battle, I definitely wasn't her opponent, so I used a little trick. My elf companion and I joined hands to cast a spell. While she was installing the gems and activating the Divine Giant Soul Shield, we completed the Earth Wave spell. Speaking of which, it really wasn't very glorious. I used the Earth Wave spell to escape the entire competition. In the end, she exhausted all her spiritual power and barely won. I still have to thank you. If she didn't use the Divine Giant Soul Shield right from the start, I really don't know who would have won in a normal competition. Hearing him say this, Long Haochen understood that Huang Yi had used Wang Yuanyuan's inertia. That girl's strength was indeed strong. Long Haochen also felt that it was a pity that she didn't enter the top 16. Humph. Shameless. Just as they were talking, an angry voice came from behind them. When the two turned around to look, wasn't it Wang Yuanyuan? Beside her was Chen Ying-er. Chen Ying-er's complexion wasn't very good either. The little lowly quickly walked in front of Long Haochen and waved her little fist at him. "Are you looking down on me? You didn't even come to the last round." Long Haochen said helplessly, "Of course not. I just happened to be busy that day. I apologize to you." Chen Ying-er stuck out her tongue at him. Before she could say anything, Wang Yuanyuan, who was so angry that she almost killed Huang Yi with her eyes, pulled him into the training field. Clearly, after the preliminaries, these two girls had formed a good friendship. Huang Yi looked at the Divine Soul Shield on Wang Yuanyuan's back with lingering fear. He shook his head helplessly and said, "I'm hoping that I won't be in the same group as this girl in the Monster Hunter's Roulette. A shield warrior who doesn't know defense and is so impulsive. I'm really afraid of her." Lin Xian patted Long Haochen's shoulder and said, "Let's go in. It's getting late." "Wait for me," a hurried voice called out. When the siblings turned around, they met a familiar face. It was none other than the incomparably strange magician Lin Xian, who didn't know how to attack. "Congratulations, congratulations. Congratulations on entering the top 16 at the same time." Lin Xian ran over with a face full of smiles. Lin Xian didn't have a good expression on her face. "What's there to congratulate? We don't deserve your congratulations." Lin Xian paused and smiled apologetically. "What's wrong, Sister Lin Xian? I didn't do anything." Lin Xian said angrily, "You didn't do anything? You don't even know how to use a single offensive spell, yet you tricked my brother into agreeing to let you enter the top 3. Don't you know how important a strong magician is to a team? When she said this, Huang Yi was the first to open his eyes wide. What? You don't know how to use offensive spells? He grabbed Lin Xian and his expression was even uglier than Lin Xian's. Lin Xian slapped his hand away. So what if I don't know how to use offensive spells? I have medicine. At that time, he relied on his strong control over magic and bribed Huang Yi with medicinal pills to sit on the throne of the Magic Temple's preliminary competition. Now that Huang Yi heard that he didn't know how to use offensive spells, it would be strange if his expression was good. Long Haochen pulled Lin Xian, who still wanted to argue with Lin Xian, and said indifferently, "Sister, don't be like this. If it wasn't for this, Lin Xian wouldn't have given me medicinal pills. His pills helped me a lot, so I should be thanking him. Brother Lin, don't worry. If I enter the top 3, I will definitely keep my promise." Then what about Kai Er? Lin Xian almost blurted out. Long Haochen was stunned. That's right. Kai Er also entered the top 60. In an instant, his face turned pale. If he entered the top 3, but could only choose Lin Xian, what about Kai Er? He remembered the promise he made not long ago very clearly. I promised to protect her for life. Lin Xian looked at the somewhat absent-minded Long Haochen, and his heart sank. His face revealed a slightly helpless bitter smile. He lightly shook his head, but didn't say anything. He patted Long Haochen's shoulder and walked in. Thinking that although the girl was strong, she couldn't see, he felt that he couldn't say anything. Lin Xian also saw that Long Haochen didn't look good, so she quickly comforted him. Now is not the time to think about this. You have to think about it if you can really enter the top 3. Long Haochen felt slightly relieved. He nodded and said, "Let's go in first." Today, the knight's trial field was obviously much more grand. Although the situation in the field had not changed, the rostrum was crowded, and it was obvious that there were many people. Without a doubt, they were all the higher-ups of the temple. At this time, more than 40 people from the top 60 of this year's Monster Hunters trial had arrived. They were all sitting in the resting area, and the top 16 participants for today's knockout competition were sitting in the front. Although the others didn't need to participate, they still came to watch the competition. One reason was that they hoped to learn the fighting methods and experience of the top 16 participants through watching the competition. At the same time, more importantly, when the knockout competition was over, it would be the roulette competition. Who didn't want to know more about the abilities of the potential future team leader? As soon as Long Haochen entered the resting area, he quickly looked around. Many people's eyes fell on him, especially the knight and the previous participants of the third group. Found it. Long Haochen completely ignored the other people's eyes, and soon he found his target. Kai Er sat quietly in the corner of the edge of the first row, with the green bamboo stick erected in front of her and leaning on her shoulder. She looked very quiet. In Long Haochen's eyes, it was a feeling of purity and beauty. Because when he obtained Blue Rain and Hibiscus of Light, Long Haochen was completely immersed in them, and didn't feel that he hadn't seen Kai Er for a long time. Seeing that she was sitting there, he hurried to walk over with Lin Xian. The originally quiet Kai Er clearly recognized his footstep. She slightly lowered her head and subconsciously tightened her hands on the green bamboo stick. "Kai Er." Long Haochen called her and sat down next to her. "Yes." Kai Er replied softly, and then she pursed her lips and refused to speak. "Kai Er, I went to the treasure pavilion of the Covenant Alliance these days, and I just came out last night." Kai Er also gave a sound of agreement. "Kai Er, what happened to you that day?" Long Haochen asked the question in his heart. This time, Kai Er didn't even respond with an "n." She just sat there quietly, but the tips of her ears were already red. Although Long Haochen didn't show up for a few days, Lin Xian had already told Kai Er what he was going to do, so Kai Er naturally wasn't in a hurry. However, Every time she thought of being hugged by Long Houchen that day and her own misunderstanding, she would blush and her heart would race. Now that she heard Long Houchen's voice again, how could she not be shy? Long Houchen didn't know what was on the little girl's mind. He frowned and said, "Kai, why are you angry? I didn't do anything. If you are angry, tell me why, okay? I can change." Lin Xian couldn't help but cover her mouth and chuckle. This young couple was really interesting. Looking at Kai, she was obviously shy, not angry. Who knows what the two of them did that day? However, feeling the pure affection between them, Lin Xian was more or less envious. She thought to herself, when would there be someone who would care for her like how her younger brother cared for Kai? Long Houchen didn't worry for too long. Just when he was scratching his head, a soft little hand quietly reached over and held his hand. Holding the soft and tender little hand in his palm, Long Houchen was stunned for a moment. Following that, his heart calmed down. His anxiety was gone and he sat there happily. Even if he was ignorant about relationships, he knew that Kai didn't blame him. In this important elimination round, naturally no one would be late. In a short while, all 60 participants had arrived. Sitting in the first row, Long Houchen didn't know many people. Other than him, Lin Xian, and Kerr, there were only Huang Yi and Yang Wenjiao. There were also 2 Knight Templars that he hadn't fought before. Those 2 were naturally the 5th Order powerhouses from the preliminary round. Long Houchen observed for a moment. There were exactly 16 people sitting in the first row. Among them, the Knights Templars occupied 5 seats, while the Temple of the Priests didn't have a single one. It was obvious that the Knight Templars were ranked first among the 6 temples for a reason. Suddenly, he felt that something was wrong. He turned his head to look at Kai and asked, "Kai, the first row seems to be for those who are participating in today's elimination round." Lin Xian finally couldn't help but laugh. "Silly boy, sometimes you're really stupid. Who said that Kai can't participate in the elimination round? She's the first in our second group." Long Houchen's eyes widened in shock. He almost let go of that soft little hand. Kai raised her head slightly and said softly, "You didn't ask me. I'm an assassin." This news was absolutely shocking to Long Houchen. Naturally, he knew that Kai was an assassin. But she couldn't see. Even though she couldn't see, she was able to get the first place in the second group. What did this mean? Long Houchen was at a loss. "Everyone, welcome to the night training field." At this moment, a familiar voice came from the training field. When Long Houchen looked up, he saw that the Holy Knight of the Knights Templars, Han Q, had arrived at the training field and was talking to the resting area. Although he didn't use any amplifying magic tools, everyone could hear his voice clearly. "First of all, I'd like to congratulate the contestants who made it to the top 16. Entering the top 16 means that you will receive a reward from the Alliance. After the competition, you can choose a secret technique that suits you the most from the Sanctuary Alliance's treasure vault. Every time you pass an elimination round, the reward will increase accordingly. As for the other contestants who didn't make it to the top 16, don't be discouraged. Passing the preliminary round and entering the top 60 has already proved your excellence. You will also become an indispensable part of the Monster Hunters in the future. The Temple League has never been about formality, so I won't say much. Now, the top 16 contestants will enter the field and draw lot. From this moment onwards, luck will be an important factor in whether you can continue to advance. And I always believe that luck is a part of strength." Kai quietly withdrew her hand and stood up with the support of the green bamboo cane. Long Houchen knew that she was shy in front of so many people and didn't want him to hold her hand. Naturally, he didn't say anything. The 16 contestants sitting in the first row filed in and walked into the trial field. Although the other 44 contestants didn't need to participate in the following individual competition, they were equally nervous. Without a doubt, Every elimination round would be a showdown between the strong, and the competition would definitely be extremely exciting. It was also related to the roulette team that would be formed soon. They all wanted to see who would be able to defeat the crowd and become the one standing at the top. After the staff checked the contestant number again to confirm their identity, the 16 people entered the trial field and stood in a circle around Han Q. At this moment, another 5 old men walked into the field and stood beside Han Q. Among these 5 old men was the Hall Master of the Assassin Temple's Chivalry Hall and the Deputy Hall Master Ing Suifeng, who controlled the most powerful 36 chivalrous assassins in the Temple of Assassins. Deputy Hall Master of the Magic Temple, Sacred Mage Tutor, leader of the Magician Group, Lin Chen. Of course, Long Haochen didn't know that this old man was Lin Xian's grandfather. Deputy Hall Master of the Temple of the Priests, Cardinal Bishop, Temple Master of the Temple of Sacrifice, Ruo Shui. Deputy Hall Master of the Warrior Temple, Hall Master of the Berserk Hall, Combat Emperor Ranker. Let me be crazy. The last person was an old woman dressed in a black robe embroidered with golden runes. Compared to Ruo Shui's gentleness, she seemed a little domineering, and her eyes were clear. She wasn't tall, but after entering the trial field, she was the one who brought the most pressure to everyone. If one felt it carefully, it was actually a terrifying pressure that was close to that of a prehistoric giant beast. This was the Deputy Hall Master of the Soul Temple, Hall Master of the Spirit Fantasy Hall, Spirit Emperor Summoner San Shui. Just as everyone felt, perhaps this San Shui Popo's cultivation was not the strongest among the 6 Deputy Hall Masters, but she was definitely the most terrifying one among the 6. Han Q smiled and said, "Everyone, shall we begin?" The other 5 nodded in agreement. Although there were 6 of them here, the other 5 were only there to supervise, and the drawing of lots was presided over by Han Q alone. The ball of light that everyone had seen many times appeared once again, and slowly descended from the sky. The ball of light expanded in the sky, and gradually turned into a huge golden halo. When it landed on the ground, it just happened to separate the 16 participants and the 6 Deputy Temple Masters. The Deputy Hall Masters were inside the halo, while the 16 participants were outside. A golden light flashed in Han Q's hand, and instantly, the entire halo shone brightly. Place one of your hands on the halo. The drawing of lots is about to begin. You can be at ease. The first place of the group will be drawn together with the second place of the other group. Following Han Q's instructions, everyone placed their hands on the halo. The other 5 Deputy Hall Masters in the circle slowly closed their eyes, and used their enormous mental power to feel the drawing of lots. The most nervous one was actually Han Q. As the Deputy Hall Master of the Knights Templars, he naturally hoped that the participants of the temple could advance further. This time, the Knights Templars had an unprecedented 5 participants in the top 16. In front of the other temple members, Han Q definitely had a lot of faith. If all 5 of them could enter the top 8, how wonderful would that be? The drawing of lots began. A gentle golden light flashed rapidly after all 16 hands landed on the halo. It rotated at a high speed, and instantly dyed the 16 participants' bodies gold. Gradually, rays of light shone one after another, and the gold color on every participant's body began to change. The main change was in the intensity of the gold color. Buzz, the halo's light faded, and the 16 participants, including Long Haochen, looked at the light on their bodies. The 5 Deputy Hall Masters in the halo opened their eyes at the same time. Other than Ruo Shui, the other 4 Deputy Hall Masters had a gloating look in their eyes. However, Han Q's expression became extremely ugly. The facts had proven that even without the supervision of the 5 Deputy Hall Masters, no one would question the fairness of the drawing of lots this time. The 5 participants of the Knights Templars had actually gathered into 2.5 pairs. That was to say, no matter what the results of this round were, the Knights Templars would at most have 3 participants in the top 8. The two unfamiliar Tier 5 knight had drawn one pair, and the intensity of their light was exactly the same. As for the other pair, it was the siblings Long Houchen and Lin Exine. Long Houchen's expression instantly changed to one of shock, and he looked at Lin Exine with an ugly expression. He had never imagined that he would still be able to maintain such a speechless look. A 1 in 8 chance, and he had actually drawn his sister. The holy Magus Lin Chen coughed and patted Han Q's shoulder, saying, "Brother Han is indeed the envoy of light. The drawing of lots this time is fair and just, and our magic temple has acknowledged it." Ing Suifeng was the most familiar with Han Q, and he laughed without a care for his image. "Old Han, your Knights Templars are indeed very strong, but your luck, tsk tisk." Han Q's face turned green, and he glared at him fiercely. The Battle Emperor Ren Wukwang laughed heartily and said, "Shadow, don't say that. The result of the drawing of lots is still very beneficial to the Knights Templars, and they have at least 2 of the top 8 spots. Doesn't that increase their chances of advancing to the top 3? The Spirit Emperor Summoner, San Shui, snorted coldly, "You fellows, what else can you do besides gloat? If you have the ability, get 5 of your people into the top 16 as well." "Thanks, Old Han. Our Soul Temple is indeed lucky that they didn't overlap." Other than the Knights Templars, the Soul Temple was in the limelight this time round. Other than Chen Ying-er, who didn't even know what she would summon but could use the Living Soul Gate, there were actually 3 other outstanding summoners who advanced to the top 16. Furthermore, 2 of them were rank 4. It could be seen how powerful summoners were. In the drawing of lots just now, these 3 summoners would be facing opponents from other temple, and it was no wonder that the cold-faced Spirit Emperor San Shui was in a good mood. Han Q's heart was bleeding. The elimination round hadn't even started, and the Knights Templars were already down 2 people. However, he couldn't lose his temper in front of so many juniors, and his face alternated between red and white. "Look at all of you are so smug. Look at how calm Ruo Shui is." Ruo Shui sighed helplessly and said, "I have no choice but to be calm. None of our Temple of the Priests' people entered the top 16. The result of this drawing has nothing to do with me." Han Q was suddenly speechless and said fiercely, "Go back to the resting area, and start the competition according to the color of the golden light on your body, from light to dark. The first group stay in the arena." After saying this, he walked towards the rostrum angrily without looking back. The huge golden halo also rose slowly and disappeared into the dome. "Sister, Long Houchen wanted to say something to Lin Exine. Lin Exine shook her head at him with a smile and said, "Silly brother, what are you doing? What's there to be embarrassed about? Do you think I can continue to advance if I meet someone else? I can enter the top 16 thanks to Kai Er's help. I'm already very satisfied. I didn't even think I could enter the top 60. Meeting you in the drawing of lots is actually the best for me. Since I'm going to lose anyway, isn't it the best situation to send you into the top 8? But Long Houchen still wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Lin Exine again. "Idiot, what but is there? Do you think I can beat you when I'm a grade 4? Or do you think my Rose can beat that little monster Haoyue? It has also evolved." Most of the other contestants had already walked towards the resting area, but Kai Er was still waiting beside Long Houchen, listening to the conversation between the siblings. You guys aren't in the first group, right?" A somewhat helpless voice sounded from the side. Long Houchen and Lin Exine turned their heads and saw Yang Wenjiao and another female summoner looking at them strangely. And the golden light on these 2 was the lightest. The female summoner's magic robe was covered with a cloak, and her head was slightly lowered, so her face could not be seen clearly. "Oh, sorry." Long Houchen nodded to him and hurriedly returned to the resting area with Lin Exine and Kai. Unbeknownst to them, Yang Wenjiao was also relieved. At least, he didn't draw either Long Houchen or Kai. Even without the psychological trauma from before, These two opponents were the most difficult to deal with. Kai, who is your opponent? Lin Xian asked Kai, who was beside Long Houchen. Kai shook her head and said, I can't see the color, so I don't know. Hearing her words, Long Houchen suddenly felt a strong sense of self-blame. He was so focused on himself and Lin Xian that he forgot that Kai couldn't see. He held her little hand apologetically. Don't worry, I'll go ask the staff. Just as Long Houchen went to ask the staff, the first round of the round of 16 began. Yang Wenjiao still didn't summon his mount. He brandished his dual swords and rushed towards the summoner opposite him like lightning. In a match between a knight and a summoner, both sides had to maintain a distance of 50 meters. The summoner opposite Yang Wenjiao held a green staff in his hand and quickly chanted an incantation. At the same time, he didn't stop and quickly retreated. Yang Wenjiao's charging speed was quite fast, but even so, the female summoner opposite him had already completed his first summon when he had just rushed 20 meters away. A green light floated from the front of the staff, and the moment it landed, a circle of green light rippled. Suddenly, thick vines drilled out of the ground and spread in an instant. This was a plant summoner. At this moment, if Yang Wenjiao didn't want to go head-on with these vines, he had to take a detour. Naturally, Yang Wenjiao wouldn't choose to do so. He rushed forward without hesitation. A brilliant golden light appeared on the two heavy swords. His footsteps quickened again, and he changed from charging to attacking. The two swords in his hands danced, and two light slashing swords swept out at the same time, flying close to the ground. Although the vines were tough, they were still fragile in front of the light slashing swords. Several vines were instantly cut apart. Yang Wenjiao's strength was undoubtedly shown at this moment. He brazenly rushed into the group of vines. He didn't use any other skills. The dual swords were impenetrable, and any vines that rushed into his swords would be instantly minced. His speed was only slightly reduced, but he was still able to pass through the vines like a hot knife through butter. At this time, the female summoner opposite him had already completed her second summoning spell. Faced with Yang Wenjiao's charge, the summoner didn't panic. This time, a dark green light rippled out. Suddenly, a large patch of thorns emerged from the ground. Not only did it block Yang Wenjiao's path, but it also hid his figure within it. A clanging sound exploded in an instant. Yang Wenjiao's forward charging figure was actually blocked. These dark green thorns, which looked much thinner than the vines, were actually as hard as iron. Although they still couldn't contend against Yang Wenjiao's dual swords, they made it so that he could no longer advance at the speed of an attack. He could only advance step by step. At this time, Long Houchen had already asked the staff. He confirmed that Kai-er's opponent was another summoner. He was also attracted by the battle in the arena. As for summoners, Long Houchen was the least familiar with them. The only summoner he had seen in a battle was Chun Ying-er's Living Soul Gate. The summoner fighting against Yang Wenjiao was obviously more reliable than Chun Ying. The speed at which she released 2 summoning spells in a row was actually this fast. Dang! Right at this moment, Yang Wenjiao's feet suddenly came to a stop, and a violent sound of impact rang out. His body also swayed, and he actually stopped. Long Houchen's eyesight was still quite good. He clearly saw that a red thorn more than a foot long bounced up from Yang Wenjiao's sword. That was obviously the attack that had just sneaked up on him. Because the resting area was above, Long Houchen could see that the summoner was still in the midst of the thorns. He didn't use the protection of the thorns to retreat. Beside him, there was a strange plant that was as tall as a person and needed a person to wrap their arms around it. This plant was covered in thorns, and there was a big red flower at the top. The red thorn just now was thrown out from its body. Long Houchen was very clear about Yang Wenjiao's strength. A thorn was able to push him back, so one could imagine the strength of its attack. Long Houchen focused and watched carefully. He could see that the strange plant's whole body trembled violently. Then, the dark red thorns on its body quickly condensed and actually gathered together. Then, it turned into a thorn more than a foot long and shot out explosively, targeting Yang Wenjiao. Good heavens! Plant summoning could actually be used like this? This was an eye-opener for Long Houchen. Dang, there was another violent collision. At the same time that it blocked Yang Wenjiao's body, the surrounding iron thorns also surrounded Yang Wenjiao at an astonishing speed from all directions. From the looks of it, this summoner actually had the upper hand. The female summoner's incantation did not stop. In front of her, pod-like plants gradually grew. The pods were very large, even larger than the previous plant with thorns on its top. It was unknown how they locked onto Yang Wenjiao, but they slowly bent down until they were parallel to the ground. Suddenly, they swung up. From each pod, 3 green beans the size of a human head were thrown out. They were actually thrown at Yang Wenjiao like catapult. Chapter 41. This works too? There were a total of 4 of these pod-like plants. This time, 12 green beans were smashed out. Moreover, a yellow plant quickly grew out of the female summoner's body. This thing was a little strange and looked like coral. The moment it grew, waves of yellow mist permeated the air. This mist didn't have any direct attack power, but any plant that came into contact with it grew crazily as if it had taken stimulants and attacked crazily. Poof 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 poof, a series of strange sounds rang out. Yang Wenjiao naturally wouldn't be hit by those beans. However, juice splattered out from every bean that he pierced. His defense wasn't impervious to water after all, and his body was instantly stained quite a bit. This green liquid carried the fragrance of plant. It wasn't poisonous, but it was extremely sticky. After coming into contact with some of it, Yang Wenjiao instantly felt his movements become much slower. In almost all the previous matches, it was only Yang Wenjiao who suppressed others. When had he ever been suppressed by others? Not only was this feeling foreign to him, but it was also extremely unpleasant. On the rostrum, Han Qiu looked at Spirit Emperor Sanshui, who was sitting not far away from him. He said in surprise, "This lady isn't bad. Her summoning speed is actually so fast. The magic staff in her hand shouldn't be an ordinary item." Sanshui snorted and said, "Don't find excuses after losing. Xiao Mo has a strong natural affinity with plant. It's said that she has some elf blood in her. No matter how good a magic staff is, it depends on the person using it. Lose? I'm afraid that's going to be very difficult." Han Qiu smiled and shook his head. "Although this girl isn't bad, it's impossible for her to win this match. Wenjiao is the best candidate for our Knights Templars to fight for first place." Holy Magus Linchun, who was sitting beside Sanshui, suddenly poked his head out and said, I remember that not long ago, there was a contestant from your Knights Templars who was seriously injured by an assassination attempt. It can't be him, right?" Sanshui instantly smiled. She smiled very happily. Han Qiu said with a face full of embarrassment and anger, "Little Lin, you want to slap my face? Fine, just you wait." Lin Chen laughed heartily and said, "I'm so scared." Ing Suifeng sat at the side and said indifferently, "Even if Yang Wenjiao was injured, it was because of our assassin temple. What's there to laugh about? I'm afraid we won't see anyone from your magic temple in the top 4 this year." The 6 temples had 3 melee fighters and 3 sorcery fighters. There was some competition between them. There were 3 melee fighters and 3 sorcery fighters. The contestants didn't expect these big shots to bicker. Yang Wenjiao, who was in the middle of the arena, exploded. The plant summoner in front of him was much more difficult to deal with than he had imagined. The surrounding plants suddenly became crazy, and there were red spikes that would sneak up on him at any time. Coupled with the sticky green liquid on his body, Yang Wenjiao was a little enraged. An intense golden light instantly rose from Yang Wenjiao's body. At this moment, his internal spiritual energy was not only radiating outwards, but also in the shape of a flame. The blazing golden light exploded from his body. The green liquid that limited his speed disappeared in an instant. All the surrounding thorns that entered the range of the flames were burned to ashes. Fire of light? Long Houchen was shocked. This skill was recorded in the inheritance ring his father had left him. However, he hadn't practiced it yet. According to his father's notes, this skill required at least rank 5 level 2 or above to use. Light and fire were inseparable. The fire of sun was even more scorching. It was a pure flame of light. Its temperature was extremely high. Using one's own liquid spiritual energy as fuel, the fire of light had the ability to burn all darkness and corrode. It was very useful for the punishment knight. This skill was also a secret skill. Moreover, it was a must-learn skill for all rank 5 punishment knight. This skill was very powerful. It could attack, defend, and dispel negative effect. However, behind its great power, its consumption was also very high. Activating this skill required 200 liquid spiritual energy. Every breath of time consumed 30 spiritual energy. Even a rank 5 knight would not be able to use it for long. Without a doubt, fire was the most destructive to plant. Although the iron thorns were stimulated by the yellow mist, they could only wither in front of the fire of light. Yang Wenjiao let out a long roar. His toes touched the ground and he attacked again. The blazing flames of light incinerated all the plants that were close to him. The only thing he needed to do was to block the red spikes that were still hurtling towards him. Moreover, with the fire of light burning, the power of the thorns was greatly reduced. The female summoner hiding in the bushes panicked. Since she could accurately hit Yang Wenjiao's position, she could naturally feel the speed of his attack. She spat out a series of rapid incantations. She pointed the staff in her hand at the ground. Instantly, 2 cherry-like fiery red plants grew rapidly. Her body suddenly moved horizontally at a high speed. Upon closer inspection, one could see that there was an extra vine around her waist. The origin of the vine was from the side of the summoning spell that she had released earlier. At this moment, the vine pulled her body horizontally. The iron thorns naturally made way for her. Her speed was even faster than Yang Wenjiao's attack. The moment she moved horizontally, Yang Wenjiao had already arrived at her previous position. With a glance, he saw the plants that were still spraying thorns and the bean pod. "Where is she?" Yang Wenjiao was slightly stunned, but his hands did not slow down. His 2 heavy swords swept towards the plants in front of him with the blazing fire of light. Although the power of these plants was great, their defense was much weaker. It was like a hot knife cutting through butter. Yang Wenjiao's plan was very clear. His opponent was only a rank 4 summoner. Her spiritual energy was limited, and it was not liquid spiritual energy. As long as he destroyed as many of her summoned creatures as possible, she would also lose the ability to fight against him. Just as he was clearing away the attacking plants, 2 large red fruits appeared in his sight. These 2 red fruits had expanded to the size of pumpkins, and they were still expanding at an alarming rate. A sense of danger quietly crept over him. While Yang Wenjiao retreated rapidly, he swung his swords. The 2 light swords formed a cross and slashed towards the red fruits. Sometimes, some people are just more infuriating. If it was Long Houchen, perhaps he would not have used these 2 swords. Because he had already sensed the danger, the best thing to do was to stay away. But Yang Wenjiao was a pure punishment knight. His attacks had long penetrated into his bones. So, he was in for a tragedy. Boom! The huge roar caused the entire knight's trial field to tremble violently. Everyone was stunned to see a mushroom cloud erupt and rise from the center of the iron thorns. The female summoner, who had already hidden far away, subconsciously took off the cloak on her head, revealing a pretty face that was both angry and happy. She stuck out her tongue and said, "The power of this violent cherry is really not small. It won't kill him, right?" In the distant rostrum, Han Qiu suddenly stood up. Not only him, but all the big shots watching the battle also followed suit and stood up, because they all knew what Yang Wenjiao's true identity was. Previously, when he was stabbed by the assassin temple, it had already caused the Knights Templars to flare up. If something really happened to him, perhaps… Sanshui? Han Qiu shouted angrily. Sanshui Popo's facial muscles twitched. I really don't know about this. When did this girl summon this kind of thing? I didn't teach her. Cough, 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 cough. A series of coughs came from the field. An extremely sorry figure drilled out from the iron thorns. His appearance really made people unable to restrain themselves from laughing. His originally beautiful armor was now scorched black. His helmet was also blown away. His hair was burnt and curled by the explosion. The armor on his arms and body were damaged in many places, faintly revealing bloodstains. His face was even more black and red. Looking at his appearance, he simply looked like a destitute beggar. Yang Wenjiao's current gloominess was simply indescribable with words. If he hadn't slashed with his sword, the violent cherry that could only explode on the spot might not have been able to hurt him. However, his slash was equivalent to directly detonating it. Although he was already retreating, the explosive power of the violent cherry was indeed very strong. Fortunately, his body was still burning with the flames of light, and he still had time to use all his strength to brandish his two swords to protect his vitals. Otherwise, this violent explosion would probably have seriously injured him. However, even so, at this moment, there wasn't a single part of his body that didn't hurt. Looking at the girl in front of him, his eyes were filled with anger. Golden light appeared again, and a holy light barrier rose up. It wasn't that Punishment Knight didn't know any healing or support skills. Holy light barrier was an essential healing skill for every knight. His two swords once again emitted a dazzling golden light. Yang Wenjiao fiercely stared at the female summoner who revealed her appearance not far away and rushed towards her with large strides. All right, you can still fight. Then I admit defeat. Bai Xiaoma said somewhat helplessly. Just as Yang Wenjiao expected, her cultivation was after all only at the 4th rank. In the previous series of continuous magic, her spiritual power had already been consumed by more than half. It was no longer possible to set up like before. Since that was the case, he might as well admit defeat. His charging footsteps came to an abrupt halt. Yang Wenjiao only felt as if there was a lump of air in his chest. Was this considered a win? Had he ever seen someone who won in such a sorry state like him? His face was full of grief and indignation, and he thought to himself, I'm simply the spokesperson for the word sadness. Can you not be like this? However, the other party had already admitted defeat, and he couldn't just rush over and continue to attack. He was very regretful that he didn't summon his mount. Yang Wenjiao secretly swore that he wouldn't pretend anymore in the following matches, and he would definitely summon his mount and go all out. Looking at his charred body, his heart was the same as the previous Han Qiu Holy Knight. It was bleeding. Yang Wenjiao vs. Bai Xiaoma. Yang Wenjiao wins, enters the top 8. The referee's announcement rang out, and at the same time, this first match ended. Even though the female summoner, Bai Xiaoma, had lost, her strange fighting style had left a deep impression on everyone present. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Bai Xiaoma's plant summoning had extremely strong control ability. If one could have such a teammate, whether it was a group battle or a solo battle, it would be the best helper. Moreover, she was only at the 4th rank. She was already able to make Yang Wenjiao, who was at the 5th rank, in such a sorry state. What would happen after she entered the 5th rank? It was still unknown to how strong she would become. It was merely the first match of the top 16, and it had already shocked all the spectating contestants. Those contestants who weren't able to advance also felt a lot less unconvinced in their hearts. However, the following second match made them a little disappointed. In the second match, it was Lin Xin and Long Haochen, the brother and sister pair. They didn't even fight at all. As soon as they got on the stage, Lin Xin admitted defeat to the referee. This kind of situation was quite rare in the top 16 of the Monster Hunters preliminaries. After all, it was very difficult to get to this stage. With every step forward, it could be said that the status of the Monster Hunters in the Alliance would increase. Even if they thought that their strength was inferior to their opponent, most of them would still choose to fight. However, there was no rule that forbade one from admitting defeat, so the referee could only announce that Long Houchen won and entered the top 8. With regards to Lin Xian's admission of defeat, Han Qiu was quite satisfied. At least she didn't exhaust Long Houchen's strength. The following matches were still carried out every day. If one exhausted too much in the previous match, it would obviously affect the following matches. Lin Xian's admission of defeat in the second match didn't affect the excitement of today's match. The next 4 matches were all exciting, and they wouldn't admit defeat until the last moment. The winning side also had to pay a certain price. After all, the strength of the contestants who could get to this stage was not too far apart. Kai it's your turn. Long Houchen held Kai-er's hand nervously. Kai nodded lightly and said in a low voice, "I'll be fine." Long Houchen wanted to send her to the arena, but Kai refused. She held the green bamboo cane in her hand and slowly walked to the arena alone. Seeing the blind Kai enter the arena, the spectating contestants had different feelings. Basically, they were divided into 2 completely opposite groups. One group was naturally full of doubts. How could a blind girl enter the top 16? The other group was nervous and excited at the same time, because they had all witnessed Kai-er's strength. The assassins from the Assassin Temple, in particular, even cheered. With her tyrannical performance in the preliminary round, Kai had already won everyone's recognition. Walking slowly into the arena, Kai slowly stood still. Her opponent had never met her in the competition before, so there was a hint of doubt and confusion in his eyes. This girl is from the Assassin Temple? Kai-er's opponent was a young man in his 20s. He had a medium build and held a red magic cane in his hand. He was the other grade 4 summoner from the Soul Temple who entered the top 16. In the previous competition, the Soul Temple's performance was remarkable. Although Bai Xiaoma failed to advance, she made Yang Wenjiao, who had a high chance of reaching the top of this year's competition, embarrassed. The other level 5 beast tamer, on the other hand, easily entered the top 8. The person in front of him was the last disciple of the Soul Temple to fight today. Assassin Temple Kai vs Soul Temple Fang Zhu. Due to the difference in their professions, the 2 sides were 40 meters apart. 4 pillars rose from the arena. Both sides get ready. Following the referee's announcement, 4 thick pillars slowly rose from the ground. Kai and the summoner called Fang Zhu also slowly retreated until there was a distance of 40 meters between them. At this moment, no one was more nervous than Long Houchen, who was in the resting area. He nervously observed the situation in the arena and wished that he could rush up and replace Kai. Lin Xian looked at him and couldn't help but smile. "Silly boy, don't be so nervous. Don't worry, nothing will happen. I've seen Kai-er's strength. I'm afraid that even you might not be able to defeat her. You just wait and see." "Okay," Long Houchen replied, but in fact, he didn't even hear Lin Xian's words. No matter what others said, the anxiety in his heart wouldn't lessen at all. He just kept thinking, Kai can't see. And she's so weak, what if she gets hurt? Long Houchen had already thought it through. If Kai was hurt by the opponent, even if it was against the rules of the competition, he would immediately rush in to heal her. Silently, he had already started to prepare the holy light barrier. Match start. Following the referee's announcement, the 7th round of the 16-8 competition officially began. Although Fang Zhu had never seen Kai before, he didn't look down on his opponent just because she was a blind girl. To be able to reach this stage with a cultivation of the 4th stage, it wasn't as simple as just strength. His will was also firm and cautious. He pointed the reddish-brown staff in his hand forward, and the clear cry of a bird rang out. A large azure bird that was about a meter in length soared through the air. This was a summoning without any incantation. It seemed that this summoning magic was stored in his staff. Just from this, it could be seen that his staff was at least a spirit demon equipment. The green bird soared into the sky and flew quickly in the direction of Kai. A faint green light also shone from its body. The moment the referee announced the start of the match, Kai held the green bamboo staff and walked in the direction of her opponent. Her speed wasn't fast, it was no different from walking normally. The green bamboo staff lightly tapped on the ground as she walked slowly. Her aura was completely restrained. It looked like an ordinary blind girl taking a stroll. The green bamboo staff didn't make a sound when it tapped on the yellow ground, it only left a simple dent. After Fang Zhu released the green bird, he had already started chanting an incantation in a hurried voice. The incantation of a summoner was different from that of a magician. The speed of their incantations was usually faster, it required frequency and not the rhythm of a magician. The deep and powerful incantation sounded urgently, and the brownish-red staff in his hand became brighter and brighter. A strong, beast-like aura spread out from the staff. Kai had only walked 10 meters when the green bird was already above her head. In an instant, it swooped down in the direction of Kai. It spread its wings, and with an ear-piercing whistle, 2-meter-wide wind blades slashed straight at Kai. Kai didn't stop moving forward, she still walked slowly. Long Houchen, who was in the resting area, almost cried out in surprise. Just as the 2 wind blades were about to hit Kai-er's body, something strange happened. Kai didn't seem to have done anything, but in that instant, her body became illusory. Immediately afterwards, those 2 wind blades unexpectedly passed through her body, and with 2 puff sounds, they smashed into the ground behind her, leaving behind 2 deep depressions. At this moment, the green bamboo staff in Kai-er's hand rose up like lightning. A cold and sharp killing intent flashed and disappeared. The green bird's body wasn't very big. The moment Kai made her move, it already felt the danger. It quickly flapped its wings and made a dexterous evasive move. However, the green bamboo staff that Kai raised instantly burst out with 3 rays of light. The length of the light was actually more than 30 feet. Poof! The green bamboo staff touched the ground. Kai was still walking forward slowly. The distance between her and the summoner was getting closer. Her aura didn't change because of the green bird's attack. It was as if everything was just an illusion. But was it really an illusion? The green bird that was evenly divided into 8 pieces fell to the ground with its own blood, splashing up a cloud of dust. It didn't even have the chance to dodge the green bamboo staff that Kai had just raised. Long Houchen exclaimed when he saw the wind blade hit Kai. His voice stopped in his throat. 20 meters away from Kai Fang Zhu, who was in the middle of rapidly chanting an incantation, suddenly had his pupils shrink to the size of a needle. His hurried incantation was almost interrupted by the scene that just happened. The storm bird was killed in a second? That was a real 4th-level magical beast. Even if it couldn't hurt the enemy, it could at least disturb them, right? However, from the beginning to the end, it didn't have the slightest effect on the advancing figure of Kai. The light from the green bamboo staff was even neater than the chef's cutting. What caused Fang Zhu's back to be instantly covered in cold sweat was that instant of extremely sharp killing intent. At this moment, he had already realized what kind of opponent he was facing. Even if she couldn't see, but her tyrannical strength still made Fang Zhu feel an unprecedented and terrifying pressure. Kai-er's speed was still very slow, but just like in the preliminary round, with every step she took, Fang Zhu's mental pressure increased a little. However, this Fang Zhu was indeed outstanding. Under such circumstances, he still managed to complete his incantation. He pointed his staff forward, and a brownish-red light shot out, turning into a door of light. Immediately after, a loud roar sounded, and a huge, sturdy figure drilled out from the door of light. 6th level magical beast, giant adamantine bear. For a 4th level summoner, being able to summon a 6th level magical beast was already a summon of a higher level. This was closely related to his own spiritual energy and equipment. But even so, after completing this summon, Fang Zhu's face still became pale. But it was a pale expression of relief. Without a doubt, the best way to deal with an assassin was to have a strong defense and an unbeatable strength. Fang Zhu's choice could be said to be very correct. The giant adamantine bear stretched out its paws, picking up Fang Zhu's body and placing him on its shoulder. Then, it stood up straight. This fellow's body was extremely sturdy. When it stood up, it was close to 4 meters tall, and its majestic body was like a small mountain. It was a stark contrast to Kai, who was slowly walking towards it. As a 6th level magical beast, the giant adamantine bear only had one innate skill, earthen roar. It could create an indiscriminate attack on the ground like an earthquake. Its greatest characteristic was that its skin was coarse and its flesh was thick, and its defense and strength were extremely high. With huge strides, it charged towards Kai. Fang Zhu's staff flashed again, and a gentle yellow light enveloped him and the giant adamantine bear, making it seem as if his body was glued to the giant adamantine bear's shoulder. No matter how the giant adamantine bear moved, it wouldn't shake him off. At this moment, Kai suddenly moved. As the saying goes, quiet as a virgin, quick as a rabbit. The instant Kai moved, her speed was so fast that she left behind a trail of afterimages. Originally, she was only 10 meters away from the giant adamantine bear. In a flash, she appeared in front of the giant adamantine bear. Under Fang Zhu's control, the giant adamantine bear instantly stomped its foot on the ground. With a loud rumble, the earthen roar activated, and a yellow earthquake erupted in all directions. However, Kai once again showed everyone her tyrannical strength. She didn't dodge, she didn't jump, and she didn't retreat. She raised the green bamboo staff in her hand and made a slashing motion. A dark shadow flashed, and a scene that left everyone dumbfounded appeared. That omnidirectional earthquake actually split open in front of Kai, as if it had been cut open by a sharp blade. It didn't affect her forward momentum at all. In the next moment, Fang Zhu couldn't see Kai's figure anymore. The competitors who were resting could only vaguely see 2 streaks of dark gold light flash by. Immediately after, the giant adamantine bear, with its astonishing defensive power, actually fell to the ground with a thud, as if a mountain of gold had been pushed down or a jade pillar toppled over. It even let out a mournful howl. 2 arrows of blood shot out from the joints behind his knees. Then, a quiet figure floated up from behind like a wisp of smoke. She placed one foot on the giant adamantine bear's head, the end of the green bamboo staff pressed against the artery in Fang Zhu's neck. No one doubted that she only needed a light movement to instantly end Fang Zhu's life. Dumbfounded, Fang Zhu was dumbfounded. He had never imagined that he would be defeated so easily. The level 6 giant adamantine bear didn't even have the chance to fight her head-on. The giant adamantine bear unwillingly swung its paw at the top of its head. In response, Kai only lightly trembled at the tip of her foot. In that instant, everyone could only see Kai's body light up with a dark golden radiance, and the giant adamantine bear's body instantly stagnated. That pair of thick bare paws drooped down powerlessly, and blood crazily spurted from its nose and mouth. It seemed to have suffered a heavy injury. I admit defeat. Fang Zhu dejectedly put down the staff in his hand. He had lost, and lost miserably. From start to finish, he didn't even have the slightest ability to resist. On the platform, Spirit Emperor San Shui said in a daze, "What kind of spirit power is that? Why is it dark gold?" Ing Suifeng glanced at her, smiled faintly, and said, "I don't know either." Floating down, Kai didn't even say a word. Her green bamboo staff touched the ground, and she slowly walked towards the resting area. Kai wins. The referee swallowed a mouthful of saliva with some difficulty. This battle looked simple and straightforward. In front of Kai, both Fang Zhu and his summoned beasts seemed so clumsy. The resting area fell into a momentary silence. Almost everyone felt their necks tighten. As they watched Kai slowly walk back to the resting area, the young geniuses participating in the competition all felt their breathing become heavy. Speed, attack power, as well as that cold and sharp killing intent, all of them brought them immense pressure. Even though they didn't participate in the battle just now, it was hard for them to calm down at this moment. Too powerful. The Assassin Temple actually had such a powerful existence. Yang Wenjiao's neck also tightened, and his chest seemed to ache faintly again. He was already beginning to wonder if he could fight against this lady even if he rode on a mount. Kai used her actions to show everyone the elegance of an assassin. Long Haochen blankly watched as Kai returned to his side and slowly sat down. Although he didn't feel his neck tighten, the way he looked at Kai had changed a lot. He slowly lowered his head and didn't look at her again. He was silently thinking about something. The soft and tender little hand quietly drilled into his palm. Kai didn't say anything, but her nimble index finger moved a few times in his palm. Long Haochen's originally somewhat gloomy heartstrings were immediately plucked and rippled. She was writing. "What's wrong with you?" The itchy feeling brought these 4 words. It was a little strange, but it also made Long Haochen's mood a little better. Long Haochen pulled her little hand and said in her white and tender palm, "You're so powerful, do you still need my protection?" Kai's palm trembled slightly. She flipped her hand and wrote in his palm, "Do you regret it?" "No." Long Haochen blurted out. He pulled her hand and wrote in a serious tone, "I will never regret it." Kai was silent. She held his hand tightly. After a long while, she wrote again on his palm, "You're not only protecting me, but also my heart." Long Haochen's heart trembled. He repeated the words she wrote in his heart, "You're not only protecting me, but also my heart." In an instant, he only felt as if a layer of his heart had been pierced, and his state of mind suddenly became clear. "That's right. I want to protect her. What does it have to do with her own strength or weakness? What I want to do is to protect her. Don't tell me I won't do it just because she's strong?" Kai just silently held his hand. After a little hesitation, she slowly leaned her head on his shoulder. At the moment of contact, both of their hearts gently trembled. Long Haochen clearly felt that Kai's hand became hot. Lin Xian sat on the other side of Long Haochen. She had been paying attention to their movements. When Kai leaned on Long Haochen's shoulder, she seemed to have heard the sound of eyeballs falling to the ground behind her. After all, the contestants who entered the top 16 were sitting in the first row. Almost everyone could see what was happening in front of them. At this time, no one was even paying attention to the ongoing 8th match. Everyone's eyes were focused on Long Haochen and Kai. Is that the powerful female assassin who defeated her opponent in an instant just now? She's actually so helpless? Looking at Kai leaning on Long Haochen's shoulder, many people's impression of her as the cold and unparalleled queen of assassins was subverted. The top 16 matches ended. Although the lot that Knights Templars drew wasn't very good, 3 of them still entered the top 8. 2 from Assassin Temple. 1 each from Magic Temple, Summoning Temple, and Warrior Temple. Tomorrow, it would be an even more intense battle for the top 8. Moreover, tomorrow's lot drawing was still random. There was also no restriction of today's group ranking. The battle between the strong would definitely take place. This time, Long Haochen and Kai didn't leave early. Instead, they were the last to leave. Lin Xian didn't disturb them and quietly left. "I want to treat you to a meal, can I?" Long Haochen whispered to Kai who was leaning on him. His body was a little stiff. He also wanted to try to hug her waist and feel that alluring curve and slender elasticity again, but he didn't dare to. Kai slowly raised her head and sat up straight. Her face hidden under the veil was frighteningly hot. She lightly shook her head. "No need. Go back early. The next matches are very important." You have to maintain your condition. Slightly disappointed, Long Houchen agreed. Kai Er's delicate ears moved slightly. She murmured in a very soft voice, "There's still time in the future." Long Houchen always had sharp ears. Hearing this, he immediately turned around and looked straight into her eyes. Kair looked up at him with some doubt. "What's wrong?" Long Houchen swallowed a mouthful of saliva and plucked up his courage. "What I want to say is, if I get the first place, can you let me hug you?" Kai Er's voice instantly rose an octave. Long Houchen was so scared that he stood up and waved his hand. "I'm sorry, I just like you too much. Just pretend I didn't say anything. Don't be angry." Although Kai couldn't see, she could clearly feel his fear and trepidation. She chuckled and gently nodded to him. Standing up, she touched the ground with her green bamboo cane. She jumped up and flew away gracefully. Kai slowed down. Long Houchen was afraid that she would fall because she couldn't see him, so he hurriedly chased after her. On the rostrum, in a dark corner, Han Q waved his fist forcefully. "Good job. You're not old, but your ability is not small. Shadow, did you see that? Just now, that little girl was snuggling up to him. Waha, it seems that this matter is done. Snuggle your sister," Ing Suifeng said somewhat gloomily. "This development is indeed a bit too fast." Han Q patted Ing Suifeng's shoulder with a smile. "Brother, thank you. Thank you, Assassin Temple, for nurturing such an outstanding talent. I'm very comforted. But, I'm very uncomfortable in my heart. Little Han, you've been stuck at the bottleneck of the 8th rank for many years. I'll help you stimulate your potential. I believe Old Man Yang won't have any objections." Chapter 42. A somewhat distorted figure gradually became clear in front of Han Q. If Long Houchen was here, he would definitely recognize this thin old man who seemed to have walked out of the void. It was the one in front of the Heavenly Saint Union's treasury. Han Q's expression immediately changed and he said with a bitter face, "Senior Xing, I was wrong. Don't stoop to my level and stoop to my level." The thin old man coldly snorted, "Less nonsense, come with me to the assassin's trial field. If you don't want to go, I'll go find your disciple and bring him there." Han Q let out a long sigh and looked like he was going to die for justice. I'll go, okay? You have to be lenient." The thin old man stepped into the void and instantly disappeared, leaving only his cold snort in the air. Han Q looked at Ing Suifeng and Ing Suifeng helplessly said, "Next time, watch your stupid mouth. Brother will pray for you." Han Q said with a sad face, "Senior Xing is already so old, but his temper is still like a raging fire. Brother, I'm going." In the end, Long Houchen couldn't catch up to Kai and could only helplessly walk back to his residence. As he walked, he suddenly realized something. His beautiful big eyes slightly widened. Kai Er's last and, could it be that she agreed to my request? She's willing to let me hug her? Yes, it must be. I'm too stupid to think of it at this time. If it wasn't like this, why would Kai run away? Long Houchen only felt a raging flame rise from within his body in an instant, his heart burning hot. His left hand moved, and he couldn't help but recall the wonderful feeling he had when he held Kai Er's slender waist that day. "I must go back and continue to cultivate. I must get first place." This strong belief made the young man full of motivation, and he took large strides back to his residence. On the side of the street, in an inconspicuous corner, Kai listened to the change in his footsteps. Her pretty face blushed and her mouth curved into a charming smile. On the second day of the elimination round, the atmosphere became even more intense. Today, the quarterfinals would be held. Whoever won today would have a 75% chance of obtaining a spiritual stove. Without a doubt, every participant would give their all in today's competition. Long Houchen and Lin Xin arrived at the Knight's training field early in the morning. Kai was still sitting at the same place as yesterday. Long Houchen leaned over and quietly held her hand. She only slightly lowered her head and did not say anything. Because Lin Xin admitted defeat yesterday, she had been eliminated. She could only sit in the rest area at the back. Long Haochen especially liked this kind of touching atmosphere that only the two of them could feel. He just held her hand with a satisfied smile on his face. 8-4, the drawing of lots will begin. The top 8 contestants, please enter the arena. Long Haochen pulled Kai to stand up. To his surprise this time, Kai did not pull her hand back. Instead, she held his hand and just like that, they walked into the arena. Kai was a smart and opinionated girl. When she leaned on Long Haochen's shoulder yesterday, she was no longer afraid of others talking about her. At that moment, she also completely faced up to her relationship with Long Haochen. The other 6 contestants looked at the young couple, and their expressions more or less changed. Some of them had experienced Long Haochen's strength, while others did not know. However, everyone had seen the tyrannical strength that Kai had displayed yesterday. Soon, the top 8 contestants arrived at the center of the arena. The method of drawing lots was no different from the day before. It was just that there were fewer people. Long Haochen was a little surprised to find that his grandmaster's complexion was a little ugly today. More accurately, it was an unhealthy paleness. His eyes were lifeless, and his facial muscles twitched from time to time. He did not know what was going on. The drawing of lots begins. Han Q said weakly. He sighed inwardly. This old man is already so old, and yet he still got beaten up. This is too pitiful. Long Haochen held Kai-er's hand as he raised his other hand and pressed it against the halo. At the same time, he also raised his head and looked at the other contestant. Of the other 6 contestants in the top 8, he only knew 2 of them, Yang Wenzhao and Huang Yi. Of the remaining 4, only the 5th Order Knight, Long Haochen had a slight impression of him. Rays of golden light flashed, and the drawing of lots was completed in an instant. In the process of drawing lots, Long Haochen's gaze was always on Kai. Naturally, the one he didn't want to draw the most was her. It seemed that his luck was not bad. The 2 of them had different shades of gold. Obviously, they would not meet each other today. Long Haochen then raised his head and looked at the others. The situation of the top 8 had already been decided. As the saying goes, some people are happy, some people are sad. The most depressed one was Huang Yi, because his opponent in the top 8 was Kai. When he saw that Kai-er's golden light was the same as his, Huang Yi only felt a bitter taste in his mouth. He knew that his path forward was most likely over. He was in a good mood. Huang Yi also knew that among the contestants today, no matter who he faced, his chances of winning would not be too high. It was just that the opponent he drew was the one he had the least chance of winning. Long Haochen also saw his opponent. Today, he had to face the 5th Order Beast Tamer from the Soul Temple. Obviously, the difficulty he had to face was not small. The Knights Templars once again showed their unlucky side. Yang Wenzhao and another 5th Order Knight were drawn in the same group. In the end, he could not avoid another battle with the Knight. However, Yang Wenzhao's expression was very relaxed. Instead, he felt that his luck was very good. At least he did not encounter Kai. The last pair was naturally the Assassin Temple's other 4th Order Peak Assassin against the Warrior Temple's only advanced. Both of them were happy. Without a doubt, among the top 8 contestants, they were the weakest, followed by Huang Yi. If they went all out, they would have a chance to enter the top 4. Han Q's facial muscles twitched even more violently. His luck was too bad. He drew one of his own again. However, today, no one came to make fun of him. Today's battle was very important to the 6 great temples. Whether or not they could enter the top 4 depended on this battle. Entering the top 4 was equivalent to having 1 foot in the top 3. This was not only a spiritual stove, but also a symbol of glory for the 6 great temples. Ing Suifeng was slightly better. He had absolute confidence in Kai. Besides, the Assassin Temple already had 2 people in the top 8. their chances were higher. Other than the Knot Temple, the vice-temple masters of the other 3 temples all stared at their own disciples, using their eyes to convey something. The one with the lightest color stays. The others return to the resting area and wait for the next match, Han Q said weakly. Long Houchen's eyes lit up. Today, the ones with the lightest golden light were him and the beast tamer. Kyer, your opponent is Huang Yi, an earth element mage, 5th order. He has an earth element spirit and is good at using earth wave to help him change his position. You will fight in the 4th match. I will fight in the 1st match. Go back and rest first. He would not repeat yesterday's mistake. Not only did he tell her about Kyer's opponent, he also told her about Huang Yi's characteristics. Long Houchen did not conceal his voice. Huang Yi's expression immediately became even more bitter. The sacred magus from the magic temple, Lin Chen, also felt bitter. He looked at Kyer, then at Huang Yi, his face filled with helplessness. The others slowly retreated, leaving only Long Houchen and the beast tamer. The referee had already entered the arena. The protective barrier outside the arena slowly rose. Knights Templars, Long Houchen, versus Soul Temple's Liao Yu. Pull apart the distance of 50 meters. Long Houchen slowly retreated, carefully observing his opponent at the same time. Liao Yu was a slender young man. His height was about the same as the 14-year-old Long Houchen. He was definitely over 20 years old. His appearance was above average, and his face was slightly pale. However, he had a pair of exceptionally bright eyes. The light in his eyes was like a mirror. As he slowly retreated, he kept staring at Long Houchen. The distance between the two gradually increased, but the aura between them was already in conflict. Liao Yu held a white magic staff in his hand. This kind of color was very rare. It was hard to tell what material it was made of. The gem embedded at the top was also white. It was as white as jade and as translucent as snow. The gem was hexagonal in shape and emitted a faint chill. The match begins. The moment the distance of 50 meters was reached, the referee announced loudly. At the same time, his figure flashed, and he quickly retreated, leaving the arena to the two. Liao Yu was already prepared. The moment the match began, his incantation burst forth like a gush. At the same time, a layer of white halo was emitted from his body. It felt like his incantation was not as fast as by Xiaomo and Feng Zhu. However, his enunciation was clearer, and there seemed to be a strange rhythm to it. What was even more peculiar was that, along with the incantation, the magic staff in his hand was also waving non-stop. With a similar rhythm, one after another, strange milky white runes quickly formed in front of him. In just 3 seconds in front of him, there was already a huge white door of light, and a magical beast leaped out like lightning. It was a snow-white leopard with some dark blue-gold coin-shaped stripes. Its body was only about 2 meters long, and it did not look very strong. However, it gave people a feeling of a combination of strength and beauty. Liao Yu took a step forward, and the white halo on his body instantly fused with the snow leopard. In the next moment, he had already appeared on the back of the snow leopard. The snow shadow leopard was as fast as lightning, as fast as the wind, and specialized in ice magic. Different snow shadow leopards had different innate magic. It was one of the few magical beasts of the 5th level that specialized in speed. When he saw the magical beast that the opponent had summoned, Long Houchen immediately made a judgment. His father and teacher had taught him to recognize the majority of magical beasts, and the snow shadow leopard was naturally one of them. Without a doubt, Liao Yu did not want to use the snow shadow leopard to attack him, but to use it as a mount, relying on the speed of the snow shadow leopard to contend with him. When Liao Yu was summoning, Long Houchen did not charge at him. On his forehead, the purple rune turned into a ray of deep purple light that shone on the ground in front of him. 9 purple lines of light flashed and disappeared. Hao Yue's huge figure had already appeared in front of him. In terms of summoning speed, it was indeed faster than Liao Yu. Mount? He had a mount? Yang Wenjiao, who was sitting in the first row of the resting area, was shocked. He could not help but stare at Haoyue in front of Long Haochen. The current Haoyue was no longer the pitiful ground fire lizard that Long Haochen had summoned. Its 4-meter-long body was comparable to that of a ground dragon. Although it was not as tall as a ground dragon, its strong and powerful limbs and broad back all gave people a heavy and solid feeling. Its 3 heads were raised up high, and the spikes on its back that extended down from its head faintly glowed with a purple halo. The 2 bone protrusions on its back that were getting bigger were like the back of a knight. Its 3 heads and 6 eyes shone brightly. At first glance, it looked rather ferocious with its 3 heads, but after a few more glances, one could feel a biting cold majesty from its body. It was absolutely domineering. Long Haochen's figure flashed, and he had already landed on Haoyue's back. A strange scene appeared. The spikes on Haoyue's back actually separated on their own and contained his body within. The protrusions on its back protruded slightly forward, supporting his body. The spikes closed inwards, firmly holding his body in place. 1 man and 1 beast were actually in perfect harmony. Before stepping into the trial field, Long Haochen was already fully equipped. The silver Holy Spirit armor glowed faintly, and his face was hidden within the helmet. At this moment, the Holy Spirit sword and Holy Spirit shield were already in his hand. The Holy Spirit set was complete. A faint silver halo was released from his body, enveloping himself and Haoyue, causing their bodies to be covered in a layer of faint silver light. This was the skill that came with the set, Holy Spirit's protection. In terms of appearance alone, Long Haochen, who was clad in silver armor, a silver sword, and a silver shield, and riding on 3 Haoyue heads, was much more tyrannical than Liao Yu, who was opposite him. Haoyue's 3 heads let out a roar at the same time, and its 4 claws swung out, brazenly charging in the direction of its opponent. Each of its 3 heads shone with a different light. Long Haochen sat on its back, appearing extremely calm. A layer of golden mist rose from his body in a ring shape, accumulating power. That's right, sitting on Haoyue's back, he did not need to move at all, and using the accumulating power skill was just right. If it could be said that all the competitions that Long Haochen had participated in before were to hone his strength, increase his combat experience, and stimulate his own potential, then, from today onwards, he would be fighting solely for the sake of victory. There was only one reason, and that was for Kai. In the resting area, Yang Wenjiao's expression had already become solemn. He had fought a great battle with Long Haochen before, and he had won in that battle. Moreover, he had won while holding back. However, at this moment, when he looked at Long Haochen again, he suddenly realized that this youth, who was much younger than him, seemed to have changed into a different person. 5th rank mount. His original advantage had been rapidly reduced. In less than a month's time, he had undergone earth-shattering changes. Yang Wenjiao was not surprised by the strength that he had displayed, but more surprised by the speed at which he had improved. Roar, roar, roar! Haoyue's 3 heads roared angrily again, and 3 different colored lights shone at the same time. The battle was about to begin. Chapter 43. Long Haochen rode on Haoyue and charged towards Liao Yu. Liao Yu's snow shadow leopard also moved. He was only a summoner. Once the knight got close to him, it would mean his defeat. Liao Yu's surprise was no less than Yang Wenjiao's. As a summoner, he was confident that no one in the same level as him would be more familiar with magical beasts. However, he did not recognize Long Haochen's mount. What was this magical beast with 3 heads that looked like an earth dragon? Especially when he saw Haoyue's 3 heads glowing with different colors, his expression changed. 3 attributes? Magic had elements that countered each other, and Haoyue, who had 3 attributes, could be said to not be countered by any element. The snow shadow leopard's speed was astonishing. When it moved at full speed, it was like a bolt of white lightning skimming to the side. Liao Yu did not stop chanting, and kept chanting rapidly. At the same time, he took out a necklace from somewhere and wore it around his neck. The necklace was silver, and there was a pink gemstone the size of a pigeon's egg hanging from it. This kind of color pendant was more suitable for girls. It was strange for a young man like Liao Yu to wear it. However, he could not care less. Whether it was Long Haochen, who was charging, or Hao Yue, who was glowing with 3 colors, they both gave him great pressure. Hao Yue's speed was obviously slower than the snow shadow leopard's, but it was very smart. It did not have any intention of catching up to the snow shadow leopard, and only followed it from a distance. It did not take the initiative to release its magic either. The knight's trial field was 300 meters in diameter. Even though Hao Yue was pressuring the snow shadow leopard in the center of the field, the distance between them was always maintained at more than 100 meters. With Hao Yue's current level of magic, it was impossible for him to attack his opponent at such a distance. Liao Yu's chanting did not stop, and he maintained a high frequency of chanting that echoed throughout the field. The pink gemstone on the necklace began to emit a layer of pink light, which combined with the light emitted by the white staff in his hand. One after another, strange symbols appeared around Liao Yu's body. They formed a strange pattern. Long Haochen didn't stop accumulating power. After his spiritual power turned into liquid form, the speed at which he accumulated power decreased, but the effect of the liquid spiritual power was obviously increased. At this moment, his body was turning golden. The Holy Spirit armor had been completely dyed golden. An incomparable divine aura continued to rise from his body, and the oppressive force that erupted from his body grew stronger and stronger. After all, the snow shadow leopard's physical strength was limited. After it ran around the night training field at its highest speed for 3 rounds, its explosive power gradually decreased, and its speed also slowed down. At this moment, Liao Yu's incantation was finally completed. One could clearly see that there were a total of 36 strange symbols surrounding his body. These symbols were all pink, like a layer of pink gauze enveloping him. A terrifying barbaric aura erupted the moment these strange symbols were completed. The terrifying pressure caused the protective barrier around the entire training ground to tremble. On the rostrum, all the experts looked at each other in dismay. Sacred Magus Lin Chen said in astonishment, "Are the youngsters nowadays so powerful? What is this? Barbaric magical beast summoning?" All the so-called barbaric magical beasts were mutated species passed down from ancient times, and were much stronger than ordinary magical beasts. The weakest barbaric magical beast was at least of the 7th rank. They would usually only exist in some special places and deep in the mountains and swamp. The 36 pink symbols rose up and spread outwards, turning into a huge pink halo that slowly disappeared into the air. However, as they disappeared, a steaming red halo appeared above Liao Yu's head. At this moment, Hao Yue suddenly moved. In the previous exchanges, the speed it had displayed was very ordinary, only that of an ordinary 6th rank magical beast. However, at this moment, an intense green light appeared on its body, causing its huge body to float slightly. At the same time, an intense green light instantly burst forth from its back, propelling its huge body at an astonishing speed towards Liao Yu as it transformed into a beam of green light. Naturally, it wasn't just Greenie who moved. An astonishing red light soared into the sky, turning into a scarlet halo in the air. The red light rebounded and descended from the sky, landing on Long Haochen's body, which had already turned completely golden. This was the support version of Dazzling Fire Dance, a peak level 5 fire support spell. Boom! Intense golden red flames suddenly erupted. Sitting upright on Hao Yue's back, Long Haochen was as dazzling as a god of war. Light's ability wasn't as dazzling as Greenie's and Fireball's, but from its head, 3 golden halos erupted in succession. Trusty Halo, Radiant Halo, Faith Halo. Among them, even Long Haochen didn't know the Radiant Halo. This halo could instantly increase the attack power of all light attribute skills by 20% and produce a compression effect on the light element. Liao Yu wasn't the only one chanting the incantation. Hao Yue and the other two had long since prepared their incantations, waiting for this moment to erupt. Light, Fireball, and Greenie actually erupted with 6 skills in an instant, 4 support and 2 speed. Almost in an instant, Long Haochen's battle prowess was raised to its peak. Liao Yu's expression changed somewhat. This powerful summon of his, relying on a medium to transcend ranks, could only launch one attack, but he had absolute confidence in its power to defeat Long Haochen. However, at the same time that this summoning spell was completed, the speed of the Snow Shadow Leopard was greatly reduced due to the influence of the savage pressure. In addition, the Snow Shadow Leopard's physical strength had already been greatly depleted, and its speed was no longer faster than Hao Yue's. More importantly, this summoning spell required 3 breaths of time to be released. And it was also at this moment that Hao Yue launched the Wind Magic Levitation and Wind Pillar, propelling its body forward at such a rapid speed. The timing of Hao Yue's attack was not Long Haochen's instruction, but Hao Yue's own timing. Even Long Haochen didn't know how it could make such a sharp judgment. Even with Long Haochen's perception, he could only make a clear judgment in the next moment. In just 2 breaths of time, Hao Yue had already carried Long Haochen across 100 meters. At this moment, all Liao Yu could do was to urge the Snow Shadow Leopard to run as fast as possible, to fight for this last bit of time for himself. In that instant, white light gushed out from Long Haochen's chest. One could faintly see a small white tripod furnace hovering in front of his chest, and the gentle white light quietly fell on the Snow Shadow Leopard's body. This caused the sprinting Snow Shadow Leopard to subconsciously turn its head to look at Long Haochen. Immediately after, a strong suction suddenly pulled it out horizontally, its body unsteady, and the Snow Shadow Leopard almost fell to the ground. Gold, brilliant gold, like a shocking long rainbow, on the Holy Spirit sword, the dazzling light and fire merged into the most dazzling light blade. A huge golden sword of up to 3 meters in length appeared in the sky, with twisted light patterns, with the unique smell of sunlight and the freshness of the air after being burned by fire, and with a dazzling tail flame, it broke through the sky. Light-severing sword, a materialized light-severing sword. With the power of the accumulated power, and the amplification of Hao Yue, Long Haochen launched the most powerful attack of his life. This attack, even a powerhouse of the 6th rank could not withstand its sharpness. This attack seemed to have condensed all of Long Haochen's spiritual power. This was an explosion of power after compression. That golden light sword, in almost an instant, had already broken through the pink clouds. The constantly fluctuating clouds suddenly condensed, and then thousands of golden lights exploded from within. Vaguely, Long Haochen heard a chirp. Although it was only a slight sound, in that instant, whether it was him or Hao Yue, they both felt as if they had been struck by lightning. A vast pressure that was accompanied by a strong sense of anger flashed by. What exactly did he summon? This question suddenly appeared in Long Haochen's mind. Although he had disrupted the other party's summoning, at this moment, his heart was not at ease. Vaguely, Long Haochen felt that he had been too careless. Although this battle method was simple and direct, he had still underestimated his opponent. If he had really completed the summoning magic just now, perhaps, he would have already lost. Liao Yu's eyes were filled with unwillingness, but, his pale face, at this moment, betrayed his current state. Long Haochen's accumulated power was at full force. How could he not have completed this summoning magic with all his might? Without the overdraft of the consumption, without the medium in front of his chest, he simply could not have completed this magic. Moreover, the severity of his overdraft was equivalent to the sacrifice that Long Haochen had used before. With the quality of his body and his recovery ability, it would be impossible for him to recover without 10 days. In other words, even if he won this battle against Long Haochen, it would be very difficult for him to participate in the next round. The reason why Liao Yu made this choice was because of his keen senses. What Long Haochen did not know was that the opponent in front of him was similar to him in some aspects, and also had a special innate spiritual energy. Otherwise, he would not have been able to break through to the 5th rank at the age of 20, the summoning profession, which was the most difficult to cultivate in the 6th Great Temple. When Long Haochen summoned Haoyue, Liao Yu acutely felt the gap between him and his opponent. He knew that he could not break through Long Haochen's accumulated power, and the magical beast that he could summon was also not stronger than Haoyue. Therefore, he could only take a risk and hope that he could enter the top 4. Unfortunately, he still lost in the end. Although he was very unwilling to lose, the outcome was already decided. What else could he do? Light illuminated heaven and earth, spiritual energy feedback. With the support of little light, Long Haochen's almost exhausted spiritual energy slowly recovered. But Haoyue had already rushed in front of his opponent. The snow shadow leopard still wanted to resist, but it was directly suppressed by Little Fire's roaring flames and could not move, and Little Green unceremoniously bit its neck. Looking at Long Haochen, Liao Yu, who was on the verge of collapse, sighed. "I lost." Long Haochen asked, "I'm very curious, what magical beast did you want to summon just now? Its power was actually so strong." Liao Yu did not hide anything. Although he was unwilling to lose, he also quite admired Long Haochen's strength. That last sword was not just a grasp of the timing. If it did not have enough power, it would be impossible to break the summoning cloud. It's the savage vermilion bird, a variant of the level 10 mythological beast Phoenix. Although I can only summon it to launch one attack, the power of this attack is comparable to that of a level 8 magical beast. That is equivalent to the attack of a level 7 professional. If the summoning really succeeded, I'm afraid the outcome will be reversed. Long Haochen's heart shook, thinking to himself, to be able to reach this step in the selection, there really is no one easy to deal with. If he really let it complete the summoning, not only would he lose, he would probably be seriously injured. How could the attack of a level 8 magical beast be so easy to resist? Long Haochen wins. While they were talking, the snow shadow leopard had already fallen to the ground, its head bitten off by Little Green. What chance did a level 4 magical beast have against a level 6 magical beast? Long Haochen jumped down, supporting Liao Yu, who was already somewhat unable to support his body. It seems that my choice of tactics is problematic. I shouldn't have used stored power to deal with you, Liao Yu calmly said. I didn't expect you to have a Saint Spiritual Stove. And if I didn't guess wrong, your Saint Spiritual Stove should have already evolved once. If possible, I sincerely hope to be in the same group as you in the Monster Hunters the day after tomorrow. Long Haochen chuckled and said, I also hope so. There was no doubt that Liao Yu was the #1 person in the Soul Temple of the Monster Hunters selection. If he could be in the same group as him, it would naturally be a great thing. Thinking of this, Long Haochen couldn't help but think of Chen Inger, who questioned him this morning. Compared to that unreliable summoning girl, Liao Yu was obviously much more outstanding. The staff quickly entered and helped Liao Yu out. Naturally, there were people from the Temple of the Priests who would treat him. After sending Haoyue back, Long Haochen strode towards the rest area. He clenched his fists tightly. He had entered the top 4, only one step away from the top 3. He was only 2 matches away from first place. The second match was between the Assassin Temple and the Warrior Temple, the 2 lucky participants who drew lots. However, drawing lots didn't mean that their matches were easy. On the contrary, this was the most brutal match in the elimination round so far. In terms of cultivation, the one from the Warrior Temple was slightly stronger, having already broken through to the 5th level. On the other hand, the one from the Assassin Temple was at the peak of the 4th level. There was a qualitative difference between the two. However, This assassin from the Assassin Temple, who was able to enter the top 8, was also quite tyrannical in strength. Moreover, he possessed 3 secret skills. Relying on the protection of the huge pillars that rose up in the middle of the field, he launched an extremely arduous battle. The entire battle lasted for nearly half an hour. In the end, the assassin relied on his amazing willpower and used himself as bait. When his opponent's heavy sword slashed into his shoulder bone, he instantly counterattacked and pierced through the armor at his opponent's throat. One slash to the throat. Of course, he didn't really kill his opponent, but at the cost of serious injuries, he finally won the battle. If one were to sum up the secret of his victory, then it would be patience. From the beginning to the end, he was suppressed, but in the end, he won with a counterattack. As the weak, he defeated a 5th-level opponent and brazenly advanced into the top 4. This match made Ng Suifeng, who was on the rostrum, nod continuously. He decided to properly groom this assassin after this qualifier. The third match was the internal battle of the Knights Templars. Before Yang Wenjiao stood up and walked towards the training field, he intentionally looked at Long Haochen. The current him looked very calm and his heart was at peace. Before Long Haochen appeared, he had always been known as the most talented among the younger generation of the Knights Templars. This talent was not only displayed in terms of strength, but also in his heart. The strength of Long Haochen and Kai had also completely stimulated Yang Wenjiao's fighting spirit. No matter who his opponent in the next round of the top 4 was, he would definitely fight with all his might. Yang Wenjiao's opponent was a very low-profile knight. His appearance was ordinary, and there was nothing special about him. However, he was unusually calm. He looked to be slightly older than Yang Wenjiao. Knights Templars Yang Wenjiao vs Knights Templars Duan Yi. Both sides get ready. The match begins. In the preliminary stage of the Knights Templars, Long Haochen was defeated by Yang Wenjiao, while Yang Wenjiao was heavily injured by Kai and was unable to continue. This Duan Yi was the first place of the preliminary stage of the Knights Templars. His strength was naturally extraordinary. Following the referee's signal, both of them did not hesitate to summon their mounts. Both of them were 5th level. Other than their own strength, it was also a competition of the strength of their mounts. Just like Long Haochen went all out, Yang Wenjiao did not hold anything back. Today, Yang Wenjiao was also wearing the same silver-white armor, but it was slightly different from Long Haochen's. In his hands was still the same pair of golden greatswords. The difference was that Duan Yi's armor was black, and so were his shield and greatsword. This was very rare among the knights. Moreover, Duan Yi's weapons and equipment were much thicker than normal equipment. At this time, Long Haochen had already returned to sit next to Kai, concentrating on the battle in front of him. He had never seen Yang Wenjiao's mount before, so he could observe it through this battle. Perhaps it was because Yang Wenjiao had defeated him before, so in his heart, he hoped that Yang Wenjiao could defeat his opponent. The golden greatswords in his hands drew a strange light in front of him, and a golden hexagram bloomed in front of Yang Wenjiao. Nay, accompanied by a long neigh, a unicorn appeared in front of everyone amidst the cries of surprise in the resting area. Its body was snow-white, and the mane on its neck was golden. A spiral golden horn stood proudly on its head. It had a pair of huge wings, and the outermost ring of feathers on its pure white wings was golden. Circles of golden light were emitted from its body. It was actually a starlight unicorn. Long Haochen had seen the beauty of this kind of unicorn with his own eyes, and had even been rejected by the king of starlight unicorns. This so-called noblest unicorn had left a deep impression on him. He really didn't expect Yang Wenjiao's mount to be a starlight unicorn. The starlight unicorn before him was 3 meters long and 8 feet tall. A pair of pure white wings slowly spread open on its back. Although it was not yet an adult, it was still very handsome. One had to know that the starlight unicorn was known as the most ideal mount for a knight. Although an adult starlight unicorn was a level 8 magical beast, because of its high compatibility with a knight, even some level 9 magical beast mounts might not be able to compare to it. This also meant that Yang Wenjiao was a sky knight. Rumble. Just as Long Houchen was admiring the starlight unicorn, on the other side, Duan Yi had also finished summoning his mount. Duan Yi's mount was far from being as beautiful and dazzling as the starlight unicorn, but it was much more terrifying. Its huge body was more than 6 meters tall, and its body was more than 3 meters long. Its 4 thick limbs were like 4 giant pillars. Its long red fur hung down, and 2 huge fangs protruded from its mouth. The most peculiar thing was that there was a golden red horn on its head. This was a golden horned mammoth, a dual-elemental pinnacle level 8 magical beast of light and fire. Oh no, this golden horned mammoth was also underage. An adult golden horned mammoth would probably be more than twice its size. But even so, this terrifying magical beast's strength was probably at the pinnacle of level 6 or level 7. In terms of aura, it was even more imposing than the starlight unicorn. In yesterday's elimination round, whether it was Long Houchen, Yang Wenjiao, or Duan Yi, none of them had released their mounts. Today, when they released their mounts for the competition, the rostrum was completely silent. Even though the other 5 temples were somewhat unwilling to admit it, they all understood. Knights Templars truly deserved to be ranked first. The younger generation of knight was not just powerful alone. Whether it was Long Houchen, Yang Wenjiao, or Duan Yi, they could all be said to be genius knight. Even Han Yu, who was eliminated by Long Houchen in the preliminary round due to his arrogance, was also a rank 5 knight. There was even another rank 5 knight who was eliminated in yesterday's competition. Even Lin Xian, a female knight with a rose unicorn, entered the top 16 of this year's competition. If it wasn't for the bad luck of the draw, perhaps tomorrow's semifinals would be a one-man show for Knights Templars. Yang Wenjiao stepped forward and got on the starlight unicorn. On the other side, the golden horned mammoth was a little too tall. It was not practical to jump on it. However, Duan Yi had his ways. The golden horned mammoth lifted one of its front hooves. After Duan Yi leaped up, he stepped on the front hooves first and used the momentum to jump again. He successfully rode on the golden horned mammoth's thick neck. The starlight unicorn ran a few steps, spread its wings, and glided into the air. A faint golden halo spread from under its feet. It was noble, elegant, dazzling, and majestic. Seeing the starlight unicorn in the air, Long Houchen could only hear praises coming from behind him. Yang Wenjiao, who was riding on the starlight unicorn, was filled with the temperament of a Prince Charming. However, not everyone was praising him. There was at least one exception. Chen Ying sat beside Wang Yuanyuan. Looking at Yang Wenjiao in the air, she curled her lips and said, "Show off." Wang Yuanyuan looked at her doubtfully and said, "Ying, do you know him?" Chen Ying's beautiful face revealed a bit of disgust. She turned her head away and said, "No." In the air, Yang Wenjiao slowly raised his 2 swords on both sides of his body. A gentle golden light spread out and merged with the golden light emitted by the unicorn in a short time, becoming the same color. At this moment, the aura emitted by Yang Wenjiao was not only full of light attribute light, but also a strong holy aura. The golden halo under the unicorn's feet also turned into a hexagram. Spreading its wings, the starlight unicorn's crystal-clear eyes did not have the slightest hostility. It glided down and headed straight for the golden horned mammoth's head. Boom! On the golden horned mammoth's side, a thick golden red flame instantly rose. At first glance, it looked like a huge golden red fireball. Duan Yi slowly raised the enlarged heavy sword in his hand. The golden red flame instantly rose, and the flame emitted from the tip of the sword was more than 3 meters long. Seeing that the starlight unicorn was approaching, about 15 meters away from the golden horned mammoth, Yang Wenjiao launched his first attack. Light severing sword crossed slash. The power of the light-severing sword burst out from the pair of golden greatswords at the same time. The cross slash appeared out of nowhere and went straight for Duan-E on the golden horned mammoth's neck. Just as the radiant blade was about to be unleashed, two specks of golden light floated out from the starlight unicorn's horn and fused with the radiant blade. Suddenly, the radiant blade underwent a qualitative change. The two blades of light glittered with resplendent starlight, and the dense holy aura and pressure it exuded completely transformed the originally weak attack. Duan-Yi's expression turned serious. He slashed out with the heavy sword in his hand, and the golden-red flame turned into a huge flaming sword, colliding with the cross slash. Suddenly, countless dazzling lights exploded in the air and scattered in all directions. The starlight unicorn streaked across the sky again. At this time, he could not help but think of how great it would be if he could Long Houchen's ready skill. He would be able to fully unleash the Sky Knight's advantage. Yang Wenjiao secretly made up his mind. After the competition ended, he would definitely use the reward to learn this skill. Was accumulating power really that useless? Long Houchen had already won several matches with this skill. Moreover, the greatest advantage of Ready was that it could help the knight burst out with the power of a higher rank attack. How could Long Houchen's previous slash in the competition be as simple as a rank 5 attack? It had at least reached the attack power of a rank 6 Radiance Knight. One in the air, one on the ground, the two sides crossed each other. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell who had the upper hand in the earlier collision. On the Starlight Unicorn's body, the golden light was clear, and there were no changes. Although Duan-E had blocked the cross slash, the golden red flames rising from the golden horned mammoth's body clearly drifted backward as if it had been blown away by a gale. The Starlight Unicorn circled in the air, and Yang Wenjiao's dual swords were already shining in the air. A holy white light rose, and it was the power of condensing the holy sword. Moreover, both swords were condensing the holy sword at the same time. At this time, the Starlight Unicorn's power was even more apparent. Halos in the shape of a hexagram rose from its body, and Yang Wenjiao's speed of condensing the holy sword was at least twice as fast. When the Starlight Unicorn launched another gliding charge, his dual swords were already emitting a glaring white sword glow. Duan-Yi's eyes flickered, but surprisingly, he did not use any skills when he saw Yang Wenjiao gliding down. "I admit defeat." A deep voice echoed throughout the arena under the stimulation of spiritual power. "Huh!" Yang Wenjiao was stunned and hurriedly raised the holy sword that he was about to slash. The Starlight Unicorn glided over the golden horned mammoth's head and circled in the air before arriving in front of Duan-E again. "Brother Duan, you admit defeat?" Yang Wenjiao looked at him, puzzled. Both sides had only carried out probing attacks. It could be said that the match had not really begun. Duan-Yi's eyes seemed to be struggling, but he still nodded at Yang Wenjiao. "In terms of overall strength, I'm confident that I'm not weaker than you. But I also know that with the Starlight Unicorn and the ability to soar in the air, you're already in an invincible position. Perhaps if I go all out, you'll have to pay a huge price if you want to defeat me. However, it's too difficult for me to win this match. Our cultivations are about the same, but the aerial superiority of the Punishment Knight and the Starlight Unicorn makes me unable to see any hope of victory. If you came from another temple, I'd definitely fight with all my might. But we're both knight." At this point, he paused for a moment before shouting in a deep voice, "For the glory of the knight." As he spoke, Duan-E raised the shield in his left hand to protect the left side of his body, and the heavy sword in his right hand was placed in front of the shield. Then, he pressed it against his left chest and performed a standard guardian knight salute. This phrase, "For the glory of the knight," was enough to tell Yang Wenjiao everything. Yang Wenjiao's expression instantly became solemn, and his eyes revealed deep respect. He held both swords in front of his chest and waved them in a crisscrossed manner. Then, he flipped his wrist and held the hilt of his right sword against his left chest, performing a punishment knight salute. In a loud voice, he said, "For the glory of the night." Yang Wenjiao's admiration for Duan Yi was sincere. There was no doubt that Duan Yi's surrender did not mean that he did not have the strength to fight. It was just that he felt that his chances of winning were small, so he gave the chance to advance to Yang Wenjiao, who was slightly stronger than him, instead of going all out. There were still matches after this. If they both suffered losses, it would mean that Knights Templars would lose a competitive spot in the top 4. After a probing attack, Duan Yi chose to directly surrender, which was to preserve Yang Wenjiao's competitive strength. Coupled with Long Haochen, who had already advanced, even if the two of them were drawn into the same group in the top 4, Knights Templars would still occupy 2 of the top 3 places as long as there were no accidents. The assassin who barely made it into the top 4 in the previous match would definitely be at the bottom. Yang Wenjiao asked himself if he was in such a situation, it would be difficult for him to be as magnanimous and decisive as Duan Yi. The phrase that they each shouted, "For the glory of the night," had already explained why this match ended so quickly. Yang Wenjiao deliberately shouted loudly to tell everyone that Duan Yi was not worse than him. On the rostrum, Han Qiu nodded slightly, and his face showed a hint of gratification. The leaders of the other major temple were silent. In their eyes there was undisguised envy. Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi, one was the sky and the other the earth. The brilliance of these two young knights made everyone seem to see their future. In addition, there was the younger Long Haochen. These 3 people would definitely become the mainstay of the Knights Templars in the future. At least in their generation, the position of the Knights Templars as the head of the 6th major temple was still unshakable. After retrieving their mounts and weapons, Yang Wenjiao and Duan Yi looked at each other and returned to the resting area with mutual appreciation. "Kai be careful," Long Haochen reminded her in a low voice. Kai nodded slightly. Her green bamboo cane touched the ground, and she slowly walked into the arena with the sound of do, do, do. The last match of the quarterfinals, Kai against Huang Yi. Huang Yi slowly walked into the arena with a bitter face. Mages and priests were most afraid of assassins, not to mention that he was about to face such a powerful existence. No one had seen Kai's bottom line. In other words, she had never shown her full strength. However, Huang Yi naturally would not admit defeat like Duan Yi. He had to give it a try. Assassin temples Kai against magic temples Huang Yi. Due to the professions of both sides, the distance between them will be 40 meters. Get ready. Assassins against mages naturally would not have the advantage of raising the giant pillar. The distance between the two sides slowly increased. Huang Yi nervously gripped his short magic cane and tried to make his breathing more even. He was already prepared to chant at any time. Match start. The 4 words that the referee shouted were like a switch on Huang Yi. Under the great pressure that Kai brought him, he completely unleashed his full potential. Chanting and summoning the earth elemental sprite were done in one go. They started by chanting in tandem. The rapid chanting continuously sounded from his and the earth elemental sprite's mouth. The intensity of the chanting was almost catching up to that of the beast tamer. Kai also moved. Her green bamboo cane touched the ground, and her body floated up like a cloud, rushing straight towards Huang Yi's direction. Every 30 feet, the green bamboo cane would touch the ground again, and her speed would increase sharply. Yellow light shot into the sky, and then a huge rock fell from the sky. What surprised the spectators was that this rockfall technique wasn't aimed at Kai, but rather at the ground to the side. Dong! A loud sound came from the ground. Huang Yi and his earth elemental sprite were still chanting, but they did not make any sound. Silent chanting? This was a high-level technique. For mages, it was no longer as simple as a secret technique. Obviously, this was Huang Yi's final trump card. As he switched to a soundless chant, he quietly moved to the side. Too sinister. This guy was taking advantage of Kai's weakness of being blind. Long Haochen, who was in the resting area, suddenly became angry. As expected, after the giant rock hit the ground, there was a thud. Kai Er's forward speed suddenly slowed, as if she was at a loss. Then, she turned and rushed towards the direction of the giant rock. Huang Yi's face showed a trace of helplessness. He had seen Kai Er's speed just now. She only needed 3 breaths to rush in front of him. In this situation, he had no other choice. If he let Kai Er rush over, he would not have a chance at all. He apologized in his heart and continued chanting with his earth elemental sprite. Just like when he defeated Wang Yuan, only by using the earth wave spell could he be invincible. Who did not want to be in the top 3? If he could win this match, there was hope for him to be in the top 3. Huang Yi was still confident that he could defeat the assassin who had won but was heavily injured. Seeing Kai Er rushing towards the direction of the boulder, he cautiously didn't dare to make any sound. Yellow halos began to condense on his magic staff, and in at most 10 breaths of time, the earth wave spell would be completed. Chapter 44. Huang Yi had already thought it through. If he encountered Long Haochen or Yang Wenjiao during the draw for the top 4, he would immediately admit defeat. Then, he would definitely have to face the assassin in the following matches for the 3rd place. Entering the top 3 was already a sure thing. Being able to obtain a spiritual stove and become the team leader to choose a team member to join his monster hunters was already his greatest wish. If he was lucky enough to draw the assassin during the draw tomorrow, then it would be even easier. There was hope for him to enter the top 2, and he might really have to fight for the 1st place. Huang Yi had always felt that his luck in this competition was pretty good, especially in the previous group matches. If Wang Yuan had performed a little better, he might not have been able to enter the top 16. His luck had been pretty good so far in the elimination round. He had not encountered a particularly strong opponent, and he hoped that his luck would continue to accompany him. Just as Huang Yi saw a glimmer of hope, and everything seemed to be developing according to his plan, suddenly Kai Er moved. Her body was like a black lightning bolt as she pounced towards Huang Yi's original position. Her speed was so fast that an afterimage was left behind. Huang Yi only felt a layer of cold sweat instantly appear on his back. If he had not moved his position, he was afraid that this dash would have been the end of him. However, before he could rejoice, Kai Er had already arrived at his original position, but she did not launch an attack as Huang Yi had expected. Instead, she lightly tapped the ground with her green bamboo cane and borrowed the force to rise again. The flexible green bamboo cane was like a bowstring, pushing Kai Er's body forward. Huang Yi was stunned. Disappeared? That's right in front of him. The moment Kai Er rushed out, her afterimage slowly scattered in the air, unexpectedly disappearing just like that. Bang! The heavy whip at the point where his neck and shoulder met caused Huang Yi to instantly lose consciousness, and he fell limply to the ground. The earth elemental spirit also seemed to be frightened, and it quickly turned into a yellow stream of light and disappeared into his chest. Huang Yi fell limply, and the figure of Kai Er appeared behind him. She slowly tapped the ground with her green bamboo cane and walked towards the direction of the resting area. All the spectating contestants sucked in a breath of cold air, especially Yang Wenjiao. He really wanted to ask, is this lady really blind? Obviously, Huang Yi had been tricked. Kai Er wasn't affected by the falling rock spell at all. Whether it was the previous pause or the wrong direction, it was all to confuse him. As for the final charge, he had used shadow clone technique in midair. When Huang Yi saw her figure disappear, she actually appeared behind Huang Yi at an unparalleled speed. Next, Huang Yi suffered a tragic blow from the green bamboo staff and fainted. Assassin Temple, Kai Er wins. Kai Er returned to Long Haochen's side and sat down. Looking at her, Long Haochen couldn't help but be in a daze. He could still clearly remember the difficulty of his battle with Huang Yi not long ago. If he hadn't summoned Haoyue at the end, he probably wouldn't have been able to defeat his opponent. However, in front of Kai Er, Huang Yi became so weak. Kair didn't even use any skills, and easily defeated her opponent. Kair, can you not be affected by the sound? Long Houchen asked in a low voice. Kair said, although I can't see, my other 5 senses are much sharper than ordinary people. But how can a sound fool me? Be it the magical undulations on his body or the smell he emitted, they all clearly tell me where he is. Long Houchen suddenly said, I see. Sigh, no wonder you agreed to my request that day. Kair tilted her head in confusion. Long Houchen chuckled and said, I'm afraid Yang Wenjiao is no match for you. Why don't we change our agreement? If you get first place, I'll let you hug me. Hearing this, Kair's pretty face instantly turned red. She lightly punched him, but didn't say anything. It was no wonder that Long Houchen didn't have confidence in himself. It wasn't just a matter of strength. If he really met Kair, he wouldn't be able to fight her at all. How could he talk about giving it his all? Long Houchen didn't care much about the ranking. Just like what Huang Yi had thought, he thought that he could still enter the top 3, as long as he could get the spiritual stove as a reward. The top 4 of this year's Monster Hunters tryouts were Long Houchen, Yang Wenjiao, Mu Ning, and Kair. Among them, Mu Ning was the other person from the Assassin Temple who advanced. At this point in the competition, only the Knights Templars and the Assassin Temple were left from the 6 temples. 2 against 2, it seemed that the Knights Templars were stronger overall. However, no one dared to ignore Kair's existence. Perhaps only the people from the Assassin Temple knew exactly how strong this girl was. Even if Mu Ning was the last, if Kair could become the champion, then the glory of the Knights Templars would be taken away by the Assassin Temple. Moreover, many people also saw the close relationship between Kair and Long Houchen. They might be the youngest couple in the history of Monster Hunters, and they might also be the couple with the greatest potential. After sending Kair back to her place, Long Houchen returned to the hotel and went straight to Yihua's room. Teacher. Yihua looked at Long Houchen, smiled and said, How was today's competition? Long Houchen smiled and said, I've already entered the top 4. He explained the process of today's competition in detail. Yihua's eyes lit up and laughed. Your results have already far exceeded my expectations. It seems that you don't need to participate in the competition for the second time. Long Houchen hesitated for a while, then said, Teacher, I have something to discuss with you. Yihua said, Go ahead. Long Houchen said, Kair also entered the top 4. Her strength is really strong. Huang Yi, whom I could only defeat with the help of Haoyue, was actually powerless in front of her. Tomorrow is the semifinals. If I encounter Kair during the drawing of lots, I want to give up this match and compete for the 3rd place. I am confident that I can defeat the other assassin. As long as I enter the top 3, I will have the chance to get the spiritual stove. If my opponent in the semifinals is not Kair, I will definitely try my best to win. You chose to give up because you can't fight against her, right? Yihua knew this disciple too well. Although Long Houchen was kind, he had a persevering personality. He would never give up a match just because his opponent was strong. Long Houchen nodded his head lightly. Yihua was silent for a while, then said, This is a competition that belongs to you, you can decide for yourself. Long Houchen was stunned. He thought that with his teacher's personality, he would definitely scold him. Yihua smiled slightly, Don't think too much. A lot of things are predestined. You have already completed your task in this competition. When the competition is over, you will join Monster Hunters. In the future, you will have to face a lot of choices. I can't always be by your side to help you decide everything. However, you have to remember, once you make a choice, it is not good to regret it. No matter if it is right or wrong, you have to bear the responsibility for your choice. Yes. After getting Yihua's agreement, Long Houchen immediately heaved a sigh of relief. After saying goodbye to his teacher, he returned to his room to train. The door was closed. Yihua sat there quietly and sighed. Silly boy, how can it be so simple? If the two of you enter the top 3, then, according to the rules of Monster Hunters, the two of you can't be in the same team anymore. He didn't tell this to Long Houchen because he was selfish. Why should his disciple give up so much for a woman? Everything should be decided by the will of the heavens. What Yi Hua didn't know was that because he didn't remind Long Houchen of the rules of Monster Hunters, it caused Long Houchen to encounter a lot of trouble. It was still the knight's trial field. After more than half a month of competition, it was finally time for the semi-finals. When Long Houchen held Kai Er's hand and walked into the field together, the whole audience quieted down. The semi-finals was the stage for the knight and the assassin. It was also a head-on competition between the two temples. Who would get the upper hand today? First, it would depend on the drawing of lots. Compared to the drawing of lots a few days ago, Yang Wenjiao seemed to be especially calm today. It was already the semi-finals, and he didn't expect to draw any good lots. Although his gaze was calm, it was also full of determination. No matter who he faced, he would do his best to win. At this time, he was actually looking forward to meeting Long Houchen and Kai Er. If he faced Long Houchen, he believed that he would have a higher chance of winning, but if he faced Kai Er, he didn't have the slightest confidence. Because, according to the rules of Monster Hunters, if the Sky Knight encountered the assassin, the Sky Knight wasn't allowed to rise into the air. But the assassin also couldn't get the protection of the giant pillar. Han Qiu, Ing Suifeng, and the other 6 deputy temple masters came to the center of the field again. Although the deputy temple masters of the other 4 temples weren't in a good mood, they were more relaxed at this time. After all, the contestants from their respective temples had already been eliminated. Han Qiu and Ing Suifeng's expressions were a bit tense, and no one knew what they were thinking. The halos calmly separated the 6 deputy temple masters from the 4 contestants who had entered the semi-finals. Han Qiu took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Draw the lots." 4 hands were raised at the same time and landed on the halos. At this time, among the 4 people who drew the lots, only Kai Er was calm. The 6 deputy temple masters' gazes became focused, and their senses became especially strong. The historical moment was coming. Luck might have been useful in the previous matches, but at this point, it wouldn't play a major role anymore. Holding their breath, the whole field was silent. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the halos and the 4 people outside of them. Light flashed, and the draw ended. When everyone saw the result, they couldn't help but gasp. Yang Wenjiao was stunned, and so was Long Houchen. A hint of helplessness appeared at the corner of Long Houchen's mouth, and he slightly lowered his head. The scene that he didn't want to see the most had finally happened. Looking at the faint golden glow on his body and Kai Er's body, he felt a little dry in his throat. "What's the result?" Kai Er asked softly. "Your opponent is me," Long Houchen said with difficulty. "Oh," Kai Er replied, as if she wasn't surprised by the result. Instead, she took the initiative to hold Long Houchen's hand. Han Qiu was also a little stunned. For the Knights Templars, this should be a good draw. However, looking at Long Houchen's expression, he couldn't help but feel uneasy. The draw has ended. Yang Wenjiao vs Mu Ning, Long Houchen vs Kai. First match, Long Houchen vs Kai. You two stay in the field and prepare for the match. The other deputy temple masters didn't have any objections, so Han Qiu announced the result of the draw. As soon as the result was announced, the resting area was instantly filled with chatter. Lin Xin even stood up nervously. "My brother is going to fight against Kai Er. What should I do? Will they really go all out?" "Wait a minute." Kai, who was holding Long Houchen's hand, suddenly spoke. The 6 deputy temple masters who were about to leave the field couldn't help but look at her in confusion. Kai said calmly, "Let's move on to the next match. I surrender." Boom! The whole field was in an uproar. Han Qiu's eyes widened. Honestly speaking, he really didn't know who to hope for in the match between Long Houchen and Kai. From the perspective of the Knights Templars, of course it would be best if Long Houchen won. That way, he would be able to meet Yang Wenjiao in the finals. However, if Long Houchen won against Kai, would it affect their relationship? Kai was the reincarnation saintess. If Long Houchen could unite with her through marriage, then without a doubt, the two of them would become the pillars of the alliance in the future. This was also the situation that the Knights Templars hoped to see the most. Kai surrendering was an ending that Han Q never expected. However, after a brief daze, his face was filled with joy. Without a doubt, Kai surrendering was the most desirable outcome for the Knights Templars. It was the best of both worlds. Ing Suifeng's expression was much worse. He hurriedly said, Kai, you really want to surrender? Kai nodded lightly. She pulled Long Houchen's hand and walked towards the resting area. Kai, Long Houchen was completely shocked by Kai-er's words. He was already prepared to surrender, but he didn't expect Kai-er to be even more direct than him. She didn't even wait for the match to start before surrendering. All of this happened too fast, to the point that he only reacted when Kai-er pulled him back. No, you can't do this. Kai-er, you're stronger than me. Long Houchen said anxiously. Kai held his hand tightly. She softly said, Your glory is my glory. These simple words, in Long Houchen's ears, were like a heavy hammer pounding on his heart. A surge of hot blood rushed into his brain in an instant, causing him to be unable to speak. Kai. Long Houchen's eyes were moist. He didn't stop Kai-er's good intentions. Just like that, he let her hold his hand and slowly walked back to the resting area. As a man, words couldn't compare to actions. I'll use my entire life to repay this favor. Kai, I have you in this life. What more can I ask for? I will never let you down. I'll use my life to protect you. At this moment, Kai-er's position in Long Houchen's heart had suddenly risen to the same level as his parents'. Even if he didn't fully understand what the love between a man and a woman was, Kai had already occupied the entire place in his heart. Yang Wenjiao stood in the middle of the arena. He looked at Mu Ning, whose eyes were filled with disbelief. The expressions on both of their faces were quite interesting. Mu Ning had never thought that the queen in her heart would surrender just like that. From his point of view, Kai would definitely be the champion. But Yang Wenjiao had a feeling of relief. Kai had chosen to surrender. His opponent in the finals would naturally be Long Houchen. Not having to face that female assassin seemed to be a very wonderful thing. The second match of the semifinals, Yang Wenjiao against Mu Ning. Are you guys ready? Yang Wenjiao immediately sobered up and said in a deep voice, Ready. On the other side, Mu Ning revealed a trace of a bitter smile. That attack from yesterday, his injuries were really too heavy. Until now, half of his body still couldn't exert any strength. Today's match, to him, was originally meaningless. I surrender. Another scene that caused the entire arena to be in an uproar appeared. Although Mu Ning's heart was extremely unwilling, other than surrendering, he really had no other choice. He didn't even have a chance to fight. With his current state, his cultivation base hadn't even reached the 5th rank. Perhaps he wouldn't even be able to withstand one move from Yang Wenjiao. So what if he didn't surrender? Such a dramatic scene, even the referee was a little stunned. He couldn't help but look towards the direction of the rostrum. Yang Wenjiao wins. Both semifinals had actually ended before the fight even started. Knights Templars became the biggest winner. Long Houchen and Yang Wenjiao entered the top 2. Everyone, don't move. There will be an announcement later. Han Q's voice came from the direction of the rostrum. The contestants who were originally preparing to leave the arena all stopped in their tracks. To them, it was a little disappointing. They originally thought that they could see a more exciting match, but there were 2 consecutive surrenders. After a while, Han Q's voice came again from the rostrum. Since there are no real matches today, after discussion by the Presidium of this year's competition, we have decided to bring forward the final. It will be done together today. We will also carry out the award ceremony and the roulette ceremony. No one is allowed to leave the arena. The final was brought forward? The roulette ceremony? This meant that the final champion would be decided today. At the same time, the final grouping of the 10 monster hunters would be completed. The monster hunters' preliminaries were originally held within the Temple League. Everything was simple, without any fancy gimmick. Since the semifinals had ended in such a way, naturally they had to save time. Next, we will first proceed to the third and fourth finals. Assassin Temple Kair and Mu Ning will enter the arena. This time, it was directly announced by Han Q. The referee in the arena was also changed. It was a man who looked to be in his 40s, with a body as sturdy as a mountain. Although he could restrain his aura, when he appeared in the center of the arena, he still brought a lot of pressure to the contestant. This referee was probably at least at the 8th rank, right? The young men and women in the resting area were all the best of the younger generation. They were more knowledgeable than their peers. They could immediately tell that this referee, whose aura was like a solid substance, was extraordinarily strong. I surrender. A cold voice resounded in the arena. The contestants who were originally discussing about the tiebreaker quieted down at the same time. Their gazes fell on the same spot. Kair stood there, slightly bowed towards the rostrum, and then sat down again. She was the one who shouted the 3 words just now. Kair, what are you doing? Long Houchen was shocked. However, Kair had already shouted the words to surrender. Kair lightly leaned her head on his shoulder. Dummy, the top 3 can't be in the same monster hunters. Long Houchen's whole body shook. That's right, the top 3 can't be in the same monster hunters. How could I actually forget such an important thing? She completely gave up the competition for me, and didn't even enter the top 3. She clearly has the ability to compete for the first place. Kair. Long Houchen only felt the emotions in his heart burst out like a geyser. He couldn't help but open his arms to hug her. Right now, he already somewhat didn't know how to express the incomparable surging emotions in his heart. Kair used her hand to support his chest, and said in a low voice, Dummy, you still haven't gotten the first place. Quickly go. It's your turn. Long Houchen grabbed her hand, brought it to his mouth, and kissed it hard. I will definitely win. After saying this, he directly jumped up, and almost rushed into the training field. Kair still raised her hand, only to feel that her whole arm was a little numb, and her pretty face hidden behind the veil was blushing, but she felt that she had never been in such a good mood in her life. It turned out that sacrificing for a person could also bring such a feeling of happiness. You said that you will protect me forever. How can I not create opportunities for you? This dummy, as early as when Long Houchen made that promise to her, she had already expected this scene to happen. Rushing into the field, Long Houchen's fighting spirit instantly soared to unprecedented heights, and one could vaguely see that his pair of crystal-clear eyes seemed to be burning with golden flames. This was the power of love. Right now, his state had entered an unprecedented peak. However, when the emotions in his heart ignited the monstrous fighting spirit, he forgot an important matter that he didn't explain to Kair. At this moment, the most unexpected one was the assassin who got the 3rd place because Kair gave up the competition. Mu Ning looked at Kair's direction dumbfoundedly, and didn't know what to say for a moment. Sometimes, happiness comes too fast, and can't be digested at all. One must know that the top 3 means that one can get an incomparably precious spiritual stove, and the opportunity to form a team with oneself as the leader. As one of the top 3, he will definitely become the leader of the Monster Hunters team. On the platform, Ing Suifeng was so angry that his nose was a little crooked, looking at Han Q with a face full of anger. Han Q very innocently said, "This has nothing to do with me, a grown-up girl can't be kept at home. However, you see, this is also a good thing. It will further promote the exchange between our 2 big temple. Moreover, in the future, Long Houchen is very likely to become the mainstay of our Knights Templars. Isn't he also the son-in-law of your assassin temple? Although his mouth said this, the smile on his face was really very treacherous. The extremely sturdy judge in the middle of the field looked at Long Houchen with some doubt, and his eyes looked towards the platform. After a while, the voice of Han Q floated down from the platform. The competition continues. Let the finals begin. After the judge slightly bowed towards the platform, he shouted loudly, Long Houchen against Yang Wenjiao. Prepare for the match. This judge at this moment was also in a very good mood, because he was also a member of the Knights Templars, seeing both of his juniors enter the finals. Although Long Houchen had a certain amount of luck, this was also the glory of the Knights Templars. Yang Wenjiao walked into the field a lot later than Long Houchen, and after bowing to the judge, he turned to Long Houchen. The destined twin stars of the Knights Templars finally met again. And this time, it was the finals of the Monster Hunter's trial. Yang Wenjiao looked at Long Houchen, and could not help but be secretly shocked. He could clearly feel Long Houchen's monstrous fighting spirit at this moment. What's going on? Kai admitted defeat twice in a row for him. Could it be that he didn't feel a bit awkward in his heart? After all, that was a victory given to him by a girl. How could he know that Long Houchen and Kai had a bet? Under Kai encouragement, his desire for victory had reached the extreme. Moreover, to Long Houchen, admittedly it was because Kai admitted defeat that he was able to enter the finals, but as long as he could defeat the popular champion Yang Wenjiao in the finals, he would be able to sufficiently prove his strength. Although it was the finals, the process was still very simple. The judge looked at both sides, confirmed that there was no mistake, and shouted, "The match begins. Be careful when you attack, do not go all out." After warning, he slowly retreated, and the light barrier representing the start of the match appeared around the field. Following the referee's announcement, both sides released their spiritual energy at almost the same time. A golden light shot into the sky, and a strong fighting spirit burst out in an instant. Long Houchen's internal spiritual energy had been suppressed for a long time, and now that it was released, it looked even more dazzling than Yang Wenjiao. Yang Wenjiao did not show any weakness, facing the pressure brought by Long Houchen. His aura quickly rose. The two of them looked at each other, and the strong fighting spirit continued to rise. They did not say anything. At this moment, in their hearts, there was only this battle in front of them, and they only had each other as opponents. Long Houchen separated his hands, and the Holy Spirit's sword suddenly appeared in his left hand. In his right hand, a dark blue halo appeared, and then a golden light burst out from the blue light, as if it was shooting out rays of light. The blade of the sword popped out. Blue rain and hibiscus of light finally appeared in his hands for the first time, and he stepped onto the battlefield. He did not choose to use the effects of the Holy Spirit set, but chose to use blue rain and hibiscus of light. This meant that in this battle, Long Houchen had chosen to fight his opponent with offense, and fight punishment with punishment. Yang Wenjiao also used the pair of golden swords. The two of them shouted at the same time, and simultaneously charged towards each other. Neither of them summoned their mounts, because at this moment, the distance between the two of them was only 20 meters. Both of them were knight, and the referee did not give the order to distance themselves. At this moment, with such a distance, it was very likely that the opponent would have the upper hand when they summoned their mounts. From the resting area, it could be clearly seen that two dazzling golden lights with an unparalleled aura were brazenly colliding with each other. That resolute aura, that dense and powerful saint energy, all of these displayed their powerful abilities to everyone. Boom! The two of them collided fiercely, and it was a head-on collision without any fancy moves. Then, they turned into two balls of golden light and bounced backward. This time, Long Houchen, whose cultivation base was slightly lower, had the upper hand. He retreated 1 meter less than Yang Wenjiao. Yang Wenjiao was shocked. When he collided with Long Houchen, he could clearly feel the madness that was emanating from Long Houchen's body. That's right, it was madness. At this moment, Long Houchen was completely ignited, and he was simply displaying his combat strength beyond his usual level. Assault. Long Houchen used the advantage of the first attack to instantly turn around and launch an attack on Yang Wenjiao. He raised the Holy Spirit sword in his left hand above his head, and a holy sword was immediately condensed. Meanwhile, the blue rain and hibiscus of light in his right hand erupted with lightning thorns towards Yang Wenjiao. In that instant, Yang Wenjiao's vision blurred. He saw the strange heavy sword in Long Houchen's right hand erupt with thousands of rays of light, as though it had suddenly exploded. The brilliance of the light was at least 10 times that of an ordinary lightning thorns. A huge ball of light erupted with thousands of rays of light, completely sealing off all of Yang Wenjiao's paths of advance and retreat. The unparalleled sharpness of the light was so oppressive that Yang Wenjiao actually felt a little suffocated. How could there be such a powerful lightning thorns? Yang Wenjiao was shocked, and did not dare to be negligent. The heavy sword in his hands instantly stuck close to his body to defend, and the rising formation activated. Golden light filled the air. Every ray of light that struck the rising formation's light barrier, which combined both offense and defense, brought about rings of golden light. It looked as though a torrential rain had descended, but was blocked by the rising formation. This was one of the special effects of blue rain and hibiscus of light. It could increase a skill's attack speed. The more compatible a skill was with this sword, the greater the increase in attack speed. After conducting a lot of experiments, Long Houchen discovered that lightning thorns had the highest compatibility with blue rain and hibiscus of light. Sure enough, when used at this moment, its full power erupted. How could a single rising formation withstand such a concentrated attack? In the blink of an eye, the rising heaven formation shattered. However, this 1 second bought Yang Wenjiao enough time to react. Accompanied by a resounding dragon's roar, Yang Wenjiao soared into the sky, propelled by the rising dragon's strike. Although he had received over a dozen slashes, he relied on the rising dragon strike's offensive and defensive properties to neutralize the might of blue rain and hibiscus of light. Seeing Yang Wenjiao soar into the sky, Long Houchen leaped into the air and chased after the rising dragon strike. At the same time, he swung the holy sword he had just condensed in his right hand. Light-severing sword. At this moment, Yang Wenjiao's valiant strength was displayed. The soaring rising dragon strike actually forcefully turned around in midair, changing its upward trajectory to a downward strike, brazenly meeting Long Houchen's sacred sword. Rumble! Gold and white collided violently, causing a dense halo of gold and white to spread out in the air. Long Houchen was directly smashed to the ground by the impact, while Yang Wenjiao also revealed his true form and used the momentum to soar into the sky. One could faintly see a trace of blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. In the collision just now, he had actually suffered a slight injury. Long Houchen's attack was simply too fierce. Yang Wenjiao did not expect him to choose to attack without holding back at all, and in the end, he still suffered a small loss. Swinging both swords, Yang Wenjiao quickly outlined a series of strange patterns in front of him. He wanted to use the short period of time his body soared into the sky to summon his Starlight Unicorn. His Starlight Unicorn had already entered the 7th grade realm. Although it had only broken through not long ago, its level was higher than Long Haoyue's. In addition, the Starlight Unicorn was highly compatible with him, and it also had the ability to fly. He would definitely be able to turn the situation around. However, at this moment, something that Yang Wenjiao did not expect happened. An intense suction force suddenly came from below, and the powerful pulling force actually directly pulled him back to the ground. At this moment, Long Houchen, who had just landed, did not give himself the slightest time to breathe. After touching the ground, he immediately bounced up, unfolded both swords, and spiraled towards Yang Wenjiao. The Saint Spiritual Stove's second evolution skill, drawing battle-killing revolving sword. Although Long Houchen's emotions were currently in a highly excited state, and his fighting spirit had already been ignited to the extreme, but the more it was in this kind of situation, the clearer and calmer his mind became. It was the complete opposite of his own explosive attack. In the split second when Yang Wenjiao collided with him in midair, Long Houchen judged what his opponent was going to do. The Saint's spiritual stove burst out in the nick of time, enveloped in a white light, and forcibly pulled Yang Wenjiao's body down. Long Houchen himself went up to meet him from below. In this kind of situation, Yang Wenjiao did not even have the opportunity to dodge, and could only choose to meet him head-on. Moreover, his summoning would inevitably be interrupted. As it turned out, Long Houchen was successful. When Yang Wenjiao felt that enormous suction force, his body's balance was affected, and his summoning was already broken. Immediately after, he saw the battle-killing revolving sword rise up with a glaring golden halo. Not good. At this critical juncture, how could Yang Wenjiao dare to have the slightest bit of reservation? Dozens of starry blue specks of light shot out from his chest, turning into balls of light that bombarded Long Houchen. It was his starry sea spiritual stove. In his current unprepared state, facing Long Houchen's battle-killing revolving sword after his cultivation had risen to the 5th step, he was afraid that he would directly suffer heavy injuries. One step lost the initiative, and every step was filled with trepidation. Long Houchen's imposing manner had already occupied the absolute upper hand. The violent collision sound was accompanied by countless rays of light exploding in the air, just like the release of fireworks. For a moment, all the participants in the resting area were dazzled. Among them, the majority were already unable to clearly see what was happening in the field. They could only vaguely see that both sides seemed to have erupted with the power of spiritual stoves. These two people actually both possessed spiritual stoves? Without a doubt, Yang Wenjiao's starry sea spiritual stove was clearly more powerful. However, these participants paid more attention to Long Houchen. That was clearly a saint's spiritual stove. For a monster hunter, being able to possess a knight with a saint's spiritual stove meant that they possessed a cornerstone. When facing a powerful enemy, such a monster hunter's chances of survival would certainly be greatly increased. If they were to choose, at least more than 80% of them would choose to be in the same group as Long Houchen. The other 20% would be because they themselves were a knight or because of some other strange reason.